My mother left a voicemail that would have broken a weaker woman. Zora, I am saying this for the last time. You are out. Do not dare show your face at the wedding or the new house. We have chosen Chad and Ebony. You are nothing but a dark cloud over this family, a bitter, jealous spinster. We are moving on to the Buckhead mansion without you. Goodbye. I listened to the message twice. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not throw my phone across the room. Instead, I took a sip of my $500 Cabernet, the kind with notes of oak and vengeance, and typed a two-letter response. Okay. Then I set the phone down on the marble island of my penthouse, overlooking the glittering Atlanta skyline, and went to work. They thought they were cutting me off. They thought they were discarding the family failure. They had no idea that by sending that voicemail, my mother had just pulled the pin on a grenade she was holding in her own hand. Because that Buckhead mansion they were planning to move into tomorrow, Chad did not buy that. I did. The trust fund my mother used to fund her country club lifestyle, that was not my father's legacy. That was my salary. They wanted to move on without me. I decided to help them speed up the process. By the next morning, there were 50 missed calls, a frantic email from their lawyer, and my family was homeless. But before I tell you how I brought my own mother to her knees, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to remind your family exactly who pays the bills. I am Zora, 35 years old, and for my entire life I have been the invisible wallet of the Anderson family. To my mother, Mama Denise, and my younger sister Ebony, I was just Zora the secretary. Zora the boring administrative assistant who lived in a small apartment downtown and probably clipped coupons to survive. They did not know that the small apartment was actually a $4 million penthouse. They did not know that my administrative job was actually a cover for my real career as one of the top commercial real estate developers in Atlanta. I own half the skyline they admire from their car windows. I built the malls they shop in. I developed the office parks where they aspire to work. I kept my success hidden because I knew them. I knew that if Mama Denise smelled money, she would drain me dry. She was a woman obsessed with appearances, status, and skin color. Growing up, the dynamic was clear. Ebony with her light skin and loose curls was the prize. She was the golden child, the one destined to marry rich and elevate the family name. I was Zora. Dark-skinned, serious, hardworking Zora. The one expected to stay in the background and support the star. And I did. I supported them for years out of a misplaced sense of duty to my late father. But the arrival of Chad changed everything. Chad was Ebony's fiancé, a 32-year-old white man with a smile that looked like it was bought on a payment plan and a suit that cost more than his actual net worth. He claimed to be a finance guy, an investment banker with old money connections. My mother ate it up. She looked at Chad and saw a trophy. She saw blue eyes and blonde hair and thought she had finally won the lottery. She did not look close enough to see the sweat on his brow when the bill came, or the way his eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal. The voicemail that started this war came the morning after the engagement party. That party was the beginning of the end. It was held 24 hours ago at a rented ballroom in Midtown. I remember walking in and feeling the air conditioning hit my face, cooling the heat that was already rising in my chest. The room was filled with our extended family, church members, and people my mother wanted to impress. Ebony was flashing a diamond ring that looked like a skating rink. A ring that I knew for a fact Chad had bought with a credit card that was about to be declined until I anonymously called the jeweler and covered the deposit just to avoid a scene. I was standing by the bar nursing a sparkling water, watching my mother parade Chad around like a show pony. Chad spotted me. He walked over his gate, arrogant, a half-empty glass of scotch in his hand. "Hey, Zora," he said, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "Be a doll and run to the bar to get me a refill, top shelf, and grab some napkins while you are at it. You look like you know your way around a service station." A few of his friends laughed. It was a calculated insult. He knew I was the sister, but he treated me like the help. It was a power play. He wanted to establish dominance early. I stared at him, my expression unmoving. Get it yourself, Chad. Your legs work fine, unlike your credit score. His smile faltered for a second, but Mama Denise swooped in before he could respond. She swatted my arm hard. Zora, do not be rude, she hissed, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she used when she wanted to cut you deep. Chad is the guest of honor. And honestly, look at what you are wearing. That drab gray suit. You do look like you are here to work the event, not enjoy it. Why can you not be more like Ebony? She radiates elegance. You just radiate effort. She turned to Chad, beaming. Forgive her, Chad. Zora is used to a different lifestyle. She works in an office answering phones. She does not understand how things work in our circle. Our circle. The circle I paid for. The circle that existed solely because I deposited $5,000 into her account every first of the month, under the guise of an allowance from Dad's estate. My father died with debt. I was the one who cleared it. I was the one who created the trust. But they believed the lie because it suited their narrative. It was easier to believe Dad left a secret fortune than to admit the dark-skinned, ugly duckling daughter was a genius. I took a breath. I had come to this party with a mission. I had run a background check on Chad. It was standard procedure for me. In my line of business, you do not sign a contract without due diligence. And marriage was the biggest contract of all. Mother, we need to talk, I said, ignoring Chad. Privately. Not now, Zora, she waved me off. We are about to make the toast. It is about the house, I said. That got her attention. The house. The legendary mansion at 45 Magnolia Lane in Buckhead. The 5-bedroom, 6-bath estate with the pool and the tennis court. The house Chad claimed he had bought for Ebony as a wedding gift. The house my mother had been bragging about on Facebook for weeks. What about the house, she asked, stepping closer, her eyes narrowing. Chad is not buying it, I said, keeping my voice low. He cannot buy it. I pulled a folded document from my purse. It was a summary of Charles Miller, also known as Chad. 3 bankruptcies, a gambling debt of $200,000 in Las Vegas, and a current credit score that was lower than the temperature in the room. He is a fraud, Mom. He is renting that house using a fake shell company, and the lease is set to expire in 2 weeks. He is trying to marry Ebony to get access to the trust fund he thinks you have. I watched her face. I expected shock. I expected concern. I expected her to look at the evidence. I was wrong. Mama Denise snatched the paper from my hand. She did not even look at it. She ripped it in half. Then she ripped it again. She threw the confetti of paper into my face. You are pathetic, she spat. The venom in her voice was so pure it was almost impressive. Look at you. You are jealous. You are consumed by it. You cannot stand that your sister, my beautiful Ebony, landed a high-value man. You cannot stand that she is getting the fairy tale while you go home to your empty apartment and your cats. I do not have cats, I said calmly. Shut up, she screamed, drawing the attention of the entire room. The music stopped. The chatter died. All eyes were on us. Auntie May, my father's sister and the only person in the family I respected, stood up from her table in the corner, her eyes wide. You are a snake, Zora, my mother continued, her voice shaking with rage. You are trying to sabotage your sister because you are miserable. Chad is a wealthy man. He loves her. He bought that house. I saw the keys. You saw keys, I said. You did not see the deed. Smack. The sound of her hand hitting my face echoed through the silent ballroom. It was not a tap. It was a full-force slap that snapped my head to the side. My cheek burned. I tasted blood in my mouth. There were gasps from the crowd. Chad was smirking in the background, his arm around Ebony, who looked at me with a mixture of pity and triumph. Get out, Mama Denise whispered, pointing a manicured finger at the door. Get out of my sight. You are not my daughter tonight. You are a stranger who came to poison our joy. Go. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had birthed me. I looked at Ebony, who said nothing. I looked at Chad, the con artist who was about to destroy them, and I felt something inside me break. Not my heart, my patience, the tether of obligation that had bound me to them for 35 years snapped clean. I straightened my jacket. I did not touch my cheek. I looked her dead in the eye. "Are you sure about this?" Denise, I asked. I did not call her mom. If I walk out that door, I am taking everything with me. The truth, the protection, and the reality check. "Go!" Ebony shouted. "We do not need you. We have Chad. We have the house. Just go. Be miserable somewhere else." I nodded. Once. I turned around and walked out. I walked past the whispering relatives. I walked past Auntie May, who reached out to grab my hand, but I gently pulled away. I needed to do this alone. I drove home in silence. I did not sleep that night. I sat by my window and watched the sun rise over the city I helped build. And then this morning, the voicemail came. The final nail in the coffin. So here we are. Present day. The wine glass is empty. The voicemail has been saved. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. I scrolled past Mother. I scrolled past Ebony. I landed on the contact labeled Assistant, Marcus. I hit call. He answered on the first ring. "Good morning, boss." "Marcus," I said, my voice steady. "You know the closing scheduled for 45 Magnolia Lane. The anonymous buyer." "Yes, the LLC we set up. We are scheduled to hand over the keys to the tenants. Mr. Miller and Ms. Ebony at noon today." "Kill it," I said. There was a pause on the line. "Kill the handover. Kill the whole deal, Marcus. Cancel the lease agreement. The LLC is retaining the property for redevelopment purposes. Change the locks. Reset the security codes. And Marcus, yes, flag the tenant, Charles Miller, for attempted fraud on the application. Send his file to the credit bureau." "Understood. Anything else?" "Yes. Call the bank. The Private Wealth Management Division. Tell them the trustee of the Denise Anderson Revocable Trust is exercising the emergency clause." "Which clause, boss?" "The insolvency clause. Freeze the accounts. Cut the cards. Effective immediately." I hung up the phone. I poured another glass of wine. I looked at the clock. It was 11 a.m. Across town, Mama Denise and Ebony were probably packing their bags, laughing about how they had finally gotten rid of me. They were probably visualizing their new life in the Buckhead mansion, the parties they would throw, the envy of their friends. They thought they were moving into a palace paid for by their white knight. They did not know that at 12 o'clock, when they arrived at that gate, the code would not work. They did not know that when they tried to call Chad, he would not be able to help them because his phone service was about to be cut off too. They did not know that the house they bragged about, the house they evicted me from, in their minds belonged to the very person they had slapped. I took a sip of wine. This was not just petty revenge, this was an education. They wanted to live in a world where appearances mattered more than truth. Fine. I was about to show them exactly what lies beneath the surface when the money runs dry. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. I could see the highway stretching out toward Buckhead. I imagined their car loaded with boxes heading toward a door that would never open. "You wanted me out, Mother," I whispered to the empty room. "Well, I am out." And I took the floorboards with me. The first conflict was coming. I checked my watch. Noon. The movers would be arriving at the mansion right about now. The show was about to begin. To understand why I pressed that button on my phone, why I chose to detonate my own family foundation, you have to go back exactly 24 hours. You have to stand where I stood in the center of the Starlight Ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton in downtown Atlanta, wearing a dress that cost more than my mother's first car and feeling like I was wearing an invisibility cloak. The air in the ballroom smelled of expensive lilies and desperation. My mother, Mama Denise, had insisted on the Ritz. She said the lighting was better for photos, which really meant she wanted to make sure the deacons from First Baptist Church saw that her daughter was marrying into what she considered the right kind of stock. The room was filled with the who is who of Black Atlanta elite, or at least the people my mother desperately wanted to be associated with. There were doctors, lawyers, and business owners all sipping champagne that, unbeknownst to them, was paid for by the shy, dark-skinned sister in the corner, who everyone assumed was a glorified secretary. I watched Ebony holding court in the center of the dance floor. She looked beautiful, I will give her that. Her skin, the color of a latte, glowed under the crystal chandeliers. She was laughing, her head thrown back, showing off the long neck my mother always praised, while simultaneously making subtle digs about my own features. Next to her was Chad. He was working the room like a politician in an election year. He had that easy, unearned confidence that some mediocre men wear like a second skin. He was telling a group of my uncles about his investments in cryptocurrency and offshore accounts, using buzzwords that sounded impressive but meant absolutely nothing to anyone who actually understood finance. I stood near the catering entrance, swirling the ice in my water glass. I was not drinking that night. I needed a clear head because in my purse, weighing down my shoulder like a brick, was a manila envelope containing the truth. I had spent the last week digging. My private investigator, a former detective named Wallace, who owed me a favor after I helped his niece get a scholarship, had been thorough. The report was damning. Charles Miller, who insisted everyone call him Chad, was not a venture capitalist. He was a venture catastrophe. I was debating the right moment to pull my mother aside when Chad spotted me. He excused himself from my uncles and sauntered over, his face flushed with alcohol and arrogance. He stopped in front of me, looking me up and down with a smirk that made my skin crawl. "Hey, Zora," he said, slurring slightly. "You look thrilling. Very sturdy. Sensible shoes." I stared at him. I was wearing Louboutins, but he would not know fashion if it hit him in the face. I said nothing. "Listen," he continued, leaning in close enough that I could smell the cheap scotch on his breath. "The bar is getting slammed. Do me a favor, will you? Run over there and grab me a double. And get a glass of white wine for your mother. She looks thirsty." I blinked, genuinely unsure if he was joking. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he laughed, patting my shoulder heavily. "You are used to fetching things, right? I mean, that is what you do. You are an assistant or something. It is basically the same skill set. Just grab the drinks, be useful." He turned to walk away, assuming his order would be filled. He treated me like the help. He did not see a sister-in-law. He did not see a human being. He saw a dark-skinned woman in a suit and his brain defaulted to servant. My blood turned to ice. I looked around the room. A few of my cousins had heard him. They giggled, covering their mouths. They did not step in. They did not correct him. They just watched to see if Zora, the family doormat, would do as she was told. That was the first crack in the dam. I did not get the drink. Instead, I turned on my heel and marched toward the head table, where my mother was holding court. She was sitting on a velvet throne chair, accepting compliments from the pastor's wife about how well she had raised Ebony. "Mother," I said, cutting through the conversation, "we need to speak. Now." Mama Denise looked up, her smile tightening at the corners. "Not now, Zora. We are celebrating. Go find a seat in the back." "It cannot wait," I said, my voice low but hard. "It is about Chad." She sighed, a dramatic exhale that caused her diamond necklace to tremble. She excused herself with a long, suffering smile to the pastor's wife and stood up, gripping my arm with fingers like steel claws. She dragged me into a small service corridor behind the kitchen, away from the prying eyes of her audience. "This better be good, Zora," she hissed, dropping the act instantly. "You are embarrassing me. Why are you hovering around like a dark cloud? Can you not just let your sister shine for one night?" I pulled away from her grip and opened my purse. I took out the envelope. I did not offer a preamble. I did not try to soften the blow. I just handed it to her. "Chad is a fraud, Mom. Read it." She looked at the envelope as if it contained anthrax. "What is this?" "It is a credit report," I said, "and a criminal background check, and 3 judgments from small claims court in Florida. Chad isn't an investment banker. He was fired from a teller job at Wells Fargo 6 months ago for theft. He has $200,000 in gambling debt. The Porsche he drives is a rental. He is 3 months behind on payments. He is not marrying Ebony because he loves her. He is marrying her because you told him our family has money. He thinks you are the one with the trust fund. Mama Denise stared at me. Her eyes were blank, uncomprehending. Then a slow, ugly smile spread across her face. She dropped the envelope on the floor. She did not even open it. "You really are pathetic, aren't you?" she said softly. I was stunned. "Did you hear me? He is broke. He is going to ruin her credit. He is going to drain us." "Us?" She laughed, a harsh barking sound. "There is no us, Zora. There is Ebony, and there is Chad, and there is me. And then there is you, standing on the outside looking in green with envy." "I am not envious," I argued, my voice rising. "I am trying to save you. He is a con artist. He is a white man from a good family who loves my daughter," she screamed, her voice echoing off the concrete walls of the corridor. "And you cannot stand it. You cannot stand that Ebony with her beauty and her grace got the prize. You cannot stand that she is getting the big wedding and the big house. You want to destroy it because you are miserable. You are 35, Zora. You are alone. You have a little desk job and a little apartment and no one to come home to. Of course you dug up dirt. That is what jealous people do." I stepped back, feeling like the floor was tilting. She truly believed that. She believed her own delusion so deeply that facts could not penetrate it. She thought I was the failure. She thought I was the charity case. "Mom," I said, my voice trembling, not with sadness, but with a rage so hot it felt cold. "I paid for this party. I paid for the dress you are wearing. I paid off the mortgage on your house 3 years ago so you would not be evicted. I am the only reason this family has any standing in this city." "Liar," she spat. "Your father left that money. Your father took care of us. You just managed the paperwork. Do not try to take credit for a dead man's work. You are just a glorified secretary, Zora. Know your place." I looked at her. I saw the woman who had criticized my hair texture since I was 4. The woman who told me to stay out of the sun so I would not get too dark. The woman who hid my college acceptance letters because she needed me to stay home and work to pay for Ebony's dance lessons. "My place," I whispered. "Yes, your place," she sneered. "And since you cannot seem to behave, since you are determined to throw mud on your sister's white dress, you can leave. Get out. Go home. I am warning you." "Denise," I said, dropping the title of mother entirely. "If I walk out those doors, I am done. I am closing the tap. Chad is broke. When the bill for this party comes due, his card will decline. And if you think you can put it on your card, you are in for a surprise." She looked at me with pure hatred. Then she did it. She raised her hand and slapped me. It was a hard, stinging slap that caught me right on the cheekbone. My head snapped to the side. The sound was loud, a sharp crack that seemed to suck the air out of the corridor. I stood there, hand to my cheek, tasting the copper tang of blood where my tooth had cut my lip. I looked at her. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving, her eyes wild with a mixture of triumph and fury. "You are jealous," she hissed, leaning into my face. "You are an ugly, jealous, bitter girl. Ebony got the husband. Ebony got the looks. And now Ebony is getting the house. You have nothing. Now get out of my sight before I call security and have you dragged out." I lowered my hand. The sting on my cheek was fading, replaced by a cold, numbing clarity. It was the moment the fever breaks, the moment you realize the patient is already dead. I had been trying to save a corpse. I had been trying to buy love from a woman who had none to sell. I looked down at the envelope on the floor. I did not pick it up. I stepped over it. "Okay," I said. My voice was steady. It didn't sound like my voice. It sounded like the voice of the woman who negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts. It sounded like Zora the developer, not Zora the daughter. "Okay, you made your choice." I turned around and walked down the corridor. I pushed open the service doors and walked back into the ballroom. The music was playing a soft jazz number. Ebony was cutting a cake that cost $2,000. Chad was whispering in her ear, probably asking her if she had cash for the valet. I did not stop. I did not look back. I walked straight through the crowd, past the people eating my shrimp, drinking my wine, and celebrating my erasure. I walked out the front doors of the Ritz-Carlton and into the humid Atlanta night. I stood on the curb while the valet retrieved my car. My cheek was throbbing. My heart should have been broken. But as I watched the city lights flicker in the distance, I realized I wasn't heartbroken. I was liberated. The slap had woken me up. For years I had held the weight of this family on my back, convinced that if I just worked harder, if I just gave more, they would eventually see me. They would value me. But that slap proved they never would. To them, I was a resource, not a relative. The valet pulled up in my car. It was a modest sedan. I kept my Bentley in the garage for client meetings. They only knew the sedan, another layer of the disguise I had worn to protect their fragile egos. I got in the car. I drove home. I sat in the dark for a long time watching the city. And then I went to sleep. The deepest, most peaceful sleep I had in years. When I woke up this morning, I checked my phone. That is when I saw the voicemail. The one telling me not to come back. The one telling me they were moving on without me. And now here we are. The flashback is over. The anger isn't gone, but it has changed. It has hardened into something useful. It has become fuel. I looked at the clock on my office wall. It was 1:30 in the afternoon. The movers would be at the mansion now. The first domino was about to fall. I picked up my phone again. I needed to make sure the show went exactly according to script. I dialed the number for the security company that monitored the Buckhead property. "This is Zora Anderson, owner of the property at 45 Magnolia Lane," I said, when the operator answered. "Yes, Ms. Anderson. How can we help you? I have reason to believe there will be an attempted unauthorized entry at the property today. A group of individuals might try to bypass the gate code. Do you want us to dispatch a patrol car?" "No," I said, examining my nails. "Not yet. Just ensure the perimeter lockdown is active. And if they call the support line claiming to be residents, inform them that the property is under management review and no access codes are to be given out. Record the calls." "Understood, Ms. Anderson. We will log any attempts. Thank you." I hung up. My cheeks still tingled where she had slapped me, a phantom reminder of why I was doing this. She wanted the house. She wanted the status. She wanted to erase me. Fine. I would give her exactly what she asked for. A life without Zora. But she was about to learn that a life without Zora meant a life without a safety net. I turned my chair to face the window. I took a deep breath. The game had officially changed. They thought they were the main characters in a fairy tale. They were about to find out they were just the comic relief in a tragedy. And the director had just yelled action. While I sat in the cool silence of my office, watching the city traffic crawl like ants below my phone, pinged with a notification. It was Instagram. Mama Denise had gone live. I propped the phone up against a stack of blueprints and tapped the screen. The video quality was crisp, likely shot on the new iPhone I had bought her for Mother's Day just last month. The camera was shaky at first, focused on the worn carpet of the living room in the house I grew up in. That house was a modest brick ranch in a decent neighborhood, a house that my father had worked 2 jobs to pay off early, so his wife would never have to worry about a mortgage. But to Mama Denise, it had become a prison of mediocrity. She wanted columns, she wanted gates, she wanted a driveway long enough to tire you out walking to the mailbox. The camera flipped and there was my mother's face filling the frame. She was wearing a wide-brimmed hat and oversized sunglasses indoors, channeling a reality TV star on a budget. Behind her, boxes were stacked high and the air was filled with the sound of packing tape ripping and high-pitched laughter. "Hey everyone," Mama Denise chirped into the camera, flashing her veneered smile. "Welcome to moving day. We are finally leaving this old shack behind. We are leveling up, honey. God has blessed us. We are shaking off the dust of the past and stepping into our season of abundance." She panned the camera around the room. Ebony was sitting on a stack of boxes sipping champagne from a plastic flute. She was wearing a white tracksuit with the word Bride Rhinestone on the back. She waved at the camera, wiggling her fingers to show off the engagement ring again. "Tell them where we are going, baby," Mama Denise urged. "We are moving to Buckhead." Ebony squealed. "To the estate. Chad bought it for us. It has 8 bedrooms, a theater, and a pool house bigger than this living room. We are going to be neighbors with rappers and athletes." The camera swiveled to Chad. He was leaning against the wall, looking less like a conquering hero and more like a man waiting for a jury verdict. He was sweating through his linen shirt. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Tell the people about the house, Chad," my mother commanded. "Yeah," Chad said, clearing his throat. "It is great. Imported marble floors, smart home system. It is a real castle for my queen." He took a large gulp of his drink. I zoomed in on his face. I knew that look. It was the look of a man who was praying that a meteor would hit the earth in the next 30 minutes, so he would not have to explain why the gate code did not work. He knew he had not bought that house. He knew he had signed a lease agreement with a shell company he thought was run by some anonymous investor. He thought he had bought himself a month of time with a bounce check and a fake wire transfer confirmation. He had no idea the landlord was sitting 5 miles away sipping wine and watching his performance in high definition. Mama Denise turned the camera back to herself. "But before we go, we have to do some spiritual cleaning. You cannot bring old burdens into a new blessing. You have to cut off the dead weight. And y'all know who I am talking about." My heart did not race. My hands did not shake. I just watched. I watched as she walked down the hallway to the small guest room at the back of the house. It was the room I stayed in whenever I came to visit to help her with her taxes or fix her computer. It was the room where I kept the few things that still mattered to me from my childhood. "This room right here," she said, kicking the door open. "This is where the negativity lived. This is where Zora slept." The comments on the live stream were flying by. "Get rid of it, Mama. Toxic energy got to go. Protect your peace." They were cheering her on. Strangers who knew nothing about who paid the light bill were encouraging her to destroy me. Mama Denise walked into the room. It was sparse. Just a bed and a few boxes I had left there for safekeeping. She grabbed a box marked Dad. "This right here," she said, lifting the heavy box with surprising strength. "This is just clutter. Old books, old papers, just dust collectors. Zora loves this trash. She thinks it makes her smart. She thinks reading these old books makes her better than us. Well, we do not need it. We have Kindles now. We have smart TVs. We do not need this dusty energy." She marched to the back door, Ebony trailing behind her with the camera giggling. They stepped out onto the back porch. The yard was overgrown because the landscaper I paid had quit last week after Mama Denise screamed at him for missing a spot. "Watch this, y'all!" Mama Denise shouted. She heaved the box over the railing. It hit the concrete patio below with a sickening thud. The cardboard split open. I saw them spill out. My father's first editions of Langston Hughes and James Baldwin, the leather-bound journals he had written in every day of his life. The architectural sketches he had drawn for me when I was a little girl, showing me how to build structures that would last. They tumbled onto the wet grass. The spine of the Baldwin book cracked. Papers scattered in the wind. "Oops," Ebony laughed. "Looks like the trash took itself out." Mama Denise was not done. She went back inside and came out with an armful of my clothes. The suits I had left there. The winter coat I bought when I got my first big bonus. "And these," she said, holding up a gray blazer. "This is what she wears to look important. She walks around downtown in these ugly clothes, acting like she owns the place. She looks like a man. No wonder she cannot keep a man. Chad would not look twice at a woman dressed like a funeral director." She threw the clothes over the railing. They fluttered down like wounded birds, landing in a heap on top of my father's books. "We are cleansing this house," Mama Denise declared, raising her hands to the sky. "We are washing our hands of jealousy. We are washing our hands of bitterness. Zora, if you are watching this, which I know you are, because you stalk us, Come get your trash. Or don't. We don't care. We are gone. We are moving on up. Chad walked onto the porch. He looked at the pile of my belongings on the grass. For a second, just a split second, I saw a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. Maybe he realized this was going too far. Or maybe he just realized that throwing away the belongings of the person who secretly controlled his fate was a bad strategic move. But he did not stop them. He needed to keep them happy. He needed to keep the charade going until he could figure out his next con. So he laughed. He wrapped an arm around Mama Denise. Good riddance, he said. New beginnings, right? Amen, Mama Denise shouted. Amen! She ended the live stream. The screen went black. I sat there in my office. The silence was absolute. I looked at the black screen of my phone. I thought about the books lying in the wet grass. I thought about my father's handwriting, the ink running as the afternoon dew settled on the pages. Those were the only things I had asked her to keep safe, the only things I had valued in that house. I felt a coldness settle in my chest. It was not the coldness of grief. It was the coldness of a judge passing a sentence. They had not just thrown away my things, they had thrown away the last shred of my mercy. They thought they were the main characters in a story about triumph. They thought they were the heroes overcoming the obstacle of the jealous sister. They did not realize they were the villains in a tragedy of their own making. I picked up my office phone and dialed the building manager for the property where my mother lived. I owned that house too. I had bought the mortgage note from the bank 5 years ago when she defaulted. She paid rent to a management company, never knowing the checks eventually came back to me. Hello, Ms. Anderson, the manager answered. Mr. Henderson, I said. I was just watching a video of the tenants at the rental property. It appears they have vacated the premises and left a significant amount of debris in the backyard. Yes, ma'am. They scheduled a move-out inspection for 1 o'clock. Cancel the inspection, I said. And Mr. Henderson, yes, change the locks immediately. If they return to retrieve anything, they are to be treated as trespassers. And call a junk removal service for the items in the backyard. Have them gather everything. Do not throw it away. Have it delivered to my office. You want the debris delivered to your office? Yes. Every scrap of paper, every piece of clothing. If it is on that lawn, I want it. And send the bill for the removal and the lock change to the security deposit. If that does not cover it, send the bill to Charles Miller at his new address. He does not have a new address on file, ma'am. He will not need one where he is going, I said. Just get my things. I hung up. I stood and walked to the window again. I checked the time. 12:30. The moving truck would be fully loaded now. They would be getting into their cars. They would be turning the key in the ignition, driving away from the modest life they despised, heading toward the Buckhead mansion. They were driving toward a mirage. I could picture the car ride, Mama Denise in the passenger seat scrolling through the comments on her live stream, feeding her ego with the praise of strangers. Ebony in the back taking selfies. Chad driving his knuckles white on the steering wheel, trying to figure out how to explain why the key code he was given by the fake landlord would not work. He was probably planning to blame the system. He was probably planning to say there was a delay with the wire transfer. He was running through his list of excuses, unaware that none of them would work because the game was rigged. I walked over to the wet bar in my office. I poured the rest of the wine down the sink. I did not want to be drunk for this. I wanted to be razor sharp. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the security camera feed for 45 Magnolia Lane. The house was beautiful. A sprawling Mediterranean-style villa with a terracotta roof and a circular driveway. I had bought it as an investment property, intending to flip it. But when Chad had approached my shell company looking to rent it to impress my sister, I had played along. I had let him dig his own grave. The camera showed the empty driveway. The iron gates were closed. The keypad at the entrance glowed with a soft blue light. It was waiting. I watched the screen, waiting for the first car to turn the corner, waiting for the collision of fantasy and reality. They called me a failure. They called me trash. They threw my father's legacy into the dirt for likes on social media. Now I was going to throw their future into the trash. I saw a black SUV turn the corner on the screen. It was Chad's rental. Behind it was a large moving truck. They were here. The car pulled up to the gate. Chad rolled down the window. He reached out to the keypad. I leaned closer to the screen. "Punch it in, Chad," I whispered. "Punch in the code." He typed 1, 2, 3, 4, pound. Nothing happened. He typed it again. Nothing. I saw him hit the intercom button. I picked up my cell phone. The call from the gate was routed to my personal number masked through the security system. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered, putting on a professional voice. "Access control. How may I help you?" "Yeah, this is Mr. Miller." Chad's voice was tight, high-pitched. "I am a new tenant. The code isn't working. The gate won't open." "I am sorry, sir," I said, my voice cool and detached. "I am showing that the lease agreement for that unit has been voided by the owner." "Voided?" he shrieked. "What do you mean, voided? I paid the deposit. I have the keys. The owner has flagged the application for fraudulent activity, sir. All access has been suspended. You are advised to vacate the entrance immediately, or law enforcement will be contacted." "Fraudulent!" he yelled. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, Mr. Miller," I said, dropping the professional accent. "I know exactly who you are." There was a silence on the line. A heavy, terrified silence. "Zora," he whispered. "Goodbye, Chad," I said. I hung up. On the screen, I saw him drop his phone. I saw Mama Denise lean over from the passenger seat, her face twisted in confusion. I saw her yelling at him. I saw Ebony get out of the back seat, looking at the closed gate, then at the house she thought was hers. She grabbed the bars of the gate and shook them. She screamed something I could not hear, but I could read her lips. "Let us in." I sat back in my chair. The show had begun. The first act was over. The curtain was rising on the second, and it was going to be a bloodbath. They were locked out. They had nowhere to go. And the only person who had the key was the one they had just thrown away. The security camera feed on my laptop screen was crystal clear, a high-definition window into the collapse of the Anderson family dynasty. I sat in my office, a glass of water in hand, watching the scene unfold on Magnolia Lane. It was a humid Atlanta afternoon, the kind where the air feels thick enough to choke on, and my mother, Mama Denise, was dressed for a garden party in the Hamptons, not a driveway standoff. Behind Chad's rented SUV, the massive moving truck idled its diesel engine, rumbling like a beast waiting to be fed. The driver was leaning out of the window, checking his watch. He was on the clock, and every minute that truck sat idling was costing money that I knew Chad did not have. Chad was standing at the keypad, his back drenched in sweat. He punched the code again. 1, 2, 3, 4, pound. The light on the panel flashed an angry, unforgiving red. Access denied, the electronic voice intoned loud enough for the camera microphone to pick up. Contract terminated. Chad slammed his hand against the metal casing. "Come on," he shouted, his voice cracking. "Open up. It is just a glitch. It has to be a glitch." Mama Denise opened the passenger door of the SUV and stepped out. Her heels clicked on the pavement, a sharp staccato rhythm of irritation. She fanned herself with a pamphlet she had grabbed from the car, her face already shiny with perspiration. "Chad, what is the holdup?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "The movers are waiting. The neighbors are watching. Open the gate." "I am trying." Denise, Chad snapped, abandoning his usual charm. "The system is rebooting or something. It is not accepting the code." "It worked yesterday when you showed me the video," Ebony whined from the back seat. She rolled down the window, sticking her head out. Her hair was perfectly styled for her big entrance, but the humidity was already starting to attack her edges. "Fix it, Chad. I need to pee, and I am not using a gas station bathroom." I leaned back in my leather chair, watching the panic set in. It was a slow burn. They still thought this was a technical difficulty. They still believed they were the rightful tenants of a multi-million-dollar estate. They had no idea they were trespassing on a fortress designed to keep people exactly like them out. A white Range Rover pulled up behind the moving truck, honking its horn. It was a neighbor, probably Mrs. Worthington, down the street, wondering why a caravan of chaos was blocking her access to the cul-de-sac. Great Mama Denise muttered, smoothing her dress. Now we are causing a traffic jam. Go talk to the movers, Chad. Tell them to back up or something. I cannot tell them to back up, Chad hissed. There is nowhere to go. We have to get inside. He pulled out his phone. I watched on my screen as he dialed. A moment later, the burner phone I kept in my desk drawer began to ring. The screen lit up with the name Chad Miller. I let it ring. On the screen, Chad paced back and forth, pressing the phone to his ear. Come on, pick up, he muttered. Who are you calling? Mama Denise asked, stepping closer to him. Her eyes were narrowing. The heat was making her makeup run, and her patience was evaporating along with it. The broker, Chad said. The woman who arranged the lease. She probably just forgot to update the security firmware. It happens all the time with these smart homes. I smiled. The broker. He meant me. He meant the woman he had treated like a servant 24 hours ago. He was calling Zora the ghost, hoping she would save him. The phone in my drawer stopped ringing. Voicemail. He dialed again. I watched him. He looked desperate. His suit jacket was off, thrown into the car, and his shirt was sticking to his skin. He looked like a man realizing the walls were closing in. She is not answering, he said, his voice rising in pitch. Well, call the office, Mama Denise barked. Call the main line. We cannot stand out here all day. My furniture is baking in that truck. I do not have the main line, Chad admitted. I only dealt with her directly. She said she was the exclusive agent. Mama Denise stared at him. The first crack in her faith appeared. It was subtle, just a twitch of her eye, a tightening of her jaw. Exclusive agent. What kind of real estate company only has one phone number, Chad? Elite ones. Chad lied quickly. Boutique firms. They value privacy. Privacy! Ebony yelled from the car. I do not want privacy. I want air conditioning. Open the gate. The moving truck driver had seen enough. He climbed down from the cab, a large man with a clipboard and very little patience for buckhead drama. He walked up to Chad, wiping his forehead with a rag. Look, buddy, the driver said. We have been sitting here for 15 minutes. My schedule is tight. Are we loading in or not? Just a minute, Chad said, holding up a finger. We are having a technical issue with the gate. Technical issue or financial issue? The driver asked, crossing his arms. Because if this gate does not open in 10 minutes, I am turning this rig around. And you are still paying for the day. We are not turning around, Mama Denise interjected, stepping between them. She summoned her most imperious tone, the one she used on waitresses and store clerks. We have a lease. This is our home. You will wait until we gain access. Do you know who we are? Lady, I do not care if you are the Queen of England, the driver said, unimpressed. I get paid to move boxes, not stand in the sun. 10 minutes. He turned and walked back to his truck. Mama Denise turned on Chad. Her face was a mask of fury. Fix this, now. I did not pack up my entire life to stand in a driveway like a beggar. I am trying, Chad yelled back. He was losing it. The facade of the cool, wealthy fiancé was melting away. He hammered the keypad again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Access denied. Lease invalid. Police have been notified of attempted breach. The automated voice was louder this time. It echoed off the stone walls of the gate. Police. Mama Denise whispered. Her hand flew to her throat. Why is it saying police? It is a glitch. Chad screamed, kicking the gate. It is a stupid computer glitch. Ebony got out of the car. She was crying now. Real tears mixed with mascara. This is humiliating, she sobbed. Mrs. Worthington is staring at us from her car. I can see her phone. She is filming us. Chad, you promised. You said everything was taken care of. It is taken care of, baby. Chad pleaded, reaching for her. Just give me a second. Don't touch me. Ebony pulled away. Just get the gate open. I watched them. The three of them standing in the driveway of a house they would never enter. They looked small. They looked pathetic. They looked exactly like what they were, grifters who had run out of road. I picked up the burner phone. I sent a text to Chad. Property management. The lease for 45 Magnolia Lane has been canceled due to fraudulent application data. The owner has barred access. Please vacate the premises immediately. I watched Chad's phone ping. He looked down at it. He read the message. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. He staggered back, leaning against the gate for support. "What is it?" Mama Denise demanded, snatching the phone from his hand. She read the message. Her lips moved silently. Then she looked up at the camera. She looked right at the lens. She didn't know I was watching, but she sensed it. She sensed the presence of the owner. "No," she whispered. "This is a mistake." She dialed the number on the screen. My burner phone rang again. I picked it up. I did not say anything. I just breathed into the receiver. "Hello," Mama Denise screamed. "Hello! Who is this? You cannot cancel the lease. We have a contract. We have movers. Who is this?" I pressed the button on my voice changer, a little toy I had bought for my nephew years ago but never gave him. It deepened my voice, made me sound like a robotic administrator. "This is the Anderson Holding Group," I said. "You are trespassing." "Anderson?" she gasped. "No. That is Zora's last name." "There are a lot of Andersons in Atlanta, ma'am," I said. "But yes, the owner is Zora Anderson." Silence. Absolute terrifying silence on the other end of the line. On the screen, I saw Mama Denise drop the phone. It clattered onto the driveway. She looked at Chad. She looked at Ebony. Then she looked back at the gate, her eyes wide with horror. "Zora," she whispered. Ebony picked up the phone. "Mom, what is going on?" "It is her," Mama Denise said, her voice trembling. "It is Zora. She owns the house." "What?" Chad asked, his voice weak. "That is impossible. She is a secretary. She owns it." Mama Denise shrieked, grabbing Chad by the lapels of his expensive linen jacket. "You idiot! You rented the house from her company. You didn't buy anything. You rented it from my daughter. I didn't know," Chad yelled, trying to push her off. "It was a shell company. It was anonymous. She played us." Ebony wailed, sinking to the ground in her white tracksuit. "She played us all." The moving truck driver honked his horn, a long, loud blast that made them all jump. He leaned out the window. "Time is up, folks. I am heading out." "Wait, Mama!" Denise yelled, running toward the truck. "You cannot leave with my furniture. Where are you going?" "Back to the depot," the driver said, putting the truck in reverse. "You can pay the storage fee and pick it up tomorrow, or we can dump it on the curb right now. Your call." "Do not dump it," she screamed. "Do not you dare dump my antique dresser on the street." "Then pay me," the driver said. "Storage fee is $500, plus the day rate for today. $2,000, cash or card." Mama Denise turned to Chad. "Pay him." I cannot," Chad stammered. "My card is... The bank is switching my accounts." "Pay him!" she screamed, slapping his chest. "I do not have it," Chad yelled back. "I am tapped out until the deal closes next week." Mama Denise looked at Ebony. Ebony shook her head, clutching her purse. "I spent my limit on the dress, Mom." Mama Denise reached into her own purse. She pulled out her wallet. She pulled out the black card, the one linked to the trust fund, the one I paid for. "I will pay it," she said, marching to the driver. "Here, put it on this." I watched on the screen. She handed the card up to the driver. He swiped it on his portable reader. He frowned. He swiped it again. He looked down at her. Declined. What she said. "That is impossible. There is a $50,000 limit on that card. Try it again." "It says card inactive," the driver said. "Contact issuer." "No," Mama Denise gasped. "No, no, no." She pulled out another card. "Try this one." Declined. And this one. Declined. She stood there surrounded by useless plastic. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The money, the trust, the allowance. It was all Zora. It had always been Zora. She looked up at the camera again. This time there was no defiance. There was only fear. Zora, she screamed at the gate. Zora, I know you can hear me. Open the gate, please. We have nowhere to go. I sat in my office. I took a sip of water. I reached for my phone and sent one final text to Chad's number, which Ebony was now holding. Zora, the movers accept cash. I suggest you check your pockets. Oh, and Mom. The bridge club starts in an hour. You wouldn't want to be late. You have a reputation to maintain. I watched as the moving truck began to back up. The driver was not waiting. He was leaving. Mama Denise ran after the truck, banging on the side. Stop! Stop! But the truck did not stop. It rumbled down Magnolia Lane, taking her furniture, her clothes, and her dignity with it. They were left standing in the driveway. No house, no furniture, no money, and a white Range Rover honking at them to get out of the way. I closed the laptop. The first collision had happened. The door was not just closed, it was welded shut. And now they were about to find out just how cold it gets when the sun goes down in Buckhead. The notification popped up on my watch while I was pouring a second cup of tea. It was a simple alert from my banking app, the kind of automated message most people dread, but I had been waiting for, with the patience of a sniper. Transaction declined. Location: Le Chateau, Atlanta. Amount $4,800. I leaned back in my chair and let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. They had taken the bait. After being humiliated in the driveway after watching their furniture disappear down the street in a cloud of diesel fumes, my mother did exactly what I knew she would do. She did not go to a hotel. She did not call a friend for help. She went to the most expensive restaurant in the city to prove that she was still a queen, even without a castle. I could picture the scene perfectly, almost as if I were sitting at the table next to them. Mama Denise would have marched into Le Chateau like she owned the building, demanding the best table, the one in the center where everyone could see her. She would be wearing her oversized sunglasses indoors to hide the fact that she had been crying, or perhaps to hide the fear that was slowly eating away at her composure. Ebony would be trailing behind her, still in that ridiculous white tracksuit, looking like a bride who had been left at the altar of common sense. And Chad. Poor Chad would be shuffling along, hoping the air conditioning would dry the sweat stains on his linen shirt before anyone important noticed him. They ordered the works. I knew this because I could see the attempted charges hitting the account in real time. First came the champagne. Dom Perignon. 2 bottles. They needed to wash away the taste of the driveway dust. Then came the appetizers. Osetra caviar. Lobster tails. The seafood tower that cost more than my first car. They were eating their feelings, and their feelings were expensive. Mama Denise was loud. I knew she was loud. She was performing. She was talking about the delay with the movers, about the technical glitch with the security system, about how hard it was to find good help these days. She was spinning a web of lies to cover the gaping hole in her reality. She was telling anyone within earshot that they were just taking a quick lunch break before settling into their estate. She was trying to convince the waiters, the other diners, and most importantly herself, that nothing was wrong. That the world was still bending to her will. Ebony was probably taking selfies with the caviar, posting them with captions about the good life, trying to bury the memory of begging me to open a gate. And Chad was drinking. He was drinking fast. He knew the bill was coming. He knew his pockets were empty, but he was banking on Mama Denise. He still believed the lie. He still thought she was the matriarch with the bottomless trust fund. He did not know the trust fund was a faucet, and I was the plumber who had just cut the main line. The meal lasted 2 hours. 2 hours of gluttony and denial. And then the moment of truth arrived. The waiter, dressed in a crisp white jacket, approached the table with a leather folder. He placed it gently in the center of the table, right next to the empty crystal glasses. I imagined the silence. That heavy, pregnant pause where everyone waits to see who will reach for the check. Usually in our family it was me. I was always the one who quietly picked up the tab while they argued about who ordered the extra side of fries. But I was not there. Chad looked at the folder. He patted his pockets, feigning a search for a wallet he knew contained nothing but maxed-out cards and a fake ID. "Oh, I seem to have left my wallet in the glove box," he would say. Mama Denise waved her hand dismissively. "Don't worry, darling. This is a celebration. I have it. It is on the trust." She reached into her purse. She pulled out the black card. The heavy, anodized titanium card that she loved to drop on tables just to hear the clatter. It was a symbol of her power, a symbol of the wealth she thought she commanded. She did not know it was just a piece of metal now. She handed it to the waiter with a flourish. "Add 20% for yourself," she said, benevolent as a monarch distributing crumbs to the peasants. The waiter bowed and walked away. I watched the clock. 3 minutes. That was how long it took for the waiter to walk to the terminal, swipe the card, see the error message, try it again, and then walk back. 3 minutes of them sipping the last of the champagne. 3 minutes of them believing they were safe. The waiter returned. He did not have a receipt. He still had the leather folder. He leaned down, his voice a discreet whisper, but in a quiet restaurant whispers carry. "I am sorry, madam." The card was declined. Mama Denise laughed. It was a sharp, incredulous sound. "That is impossible. There must be a mistake with your machine. Run it again." "I have run it 3 times, madam. The system says do not honor. Do not honor." The words hung in the air. "Here," she said, her voice rising. "Use this one." She pulled out the platinum visa. The waiter took it. He walked away. He came back 2 minutes later. "Declined, madam." The gold MasterCard. Declined. The emergency debit card she kept for rainy days. Declined. Insufficient funds. The silence at the table was no longer comfortable. It was suffocating. People were starting to look. The couple at the next table stopped eating their salads. The manager was hovering near the host stand, adjusting his tie. "This is ridiculous," Mama Denise shouted, slamming her hand on the table. "Do you know who I am? Do you know how much money is in these accounts? Your system is broken. I'm going to call the bank right now and have your job for this incompetence." She pulled out her phone. She was furious. She was humiliated. She needed a target. And she thought the target was a bank teller. She dialed the private wealth management number on the back of the black card. She put it on speakerphone. She wanted the waiter to hear. She wanted Chad and Ebony to hear. She wanted the whole restaurant to hear her dress down the fool who had dared to embarrass her. I sat in my office and watched the seconds tick by on the clock. I knew who she was calling. I knew the protocol. When a trustee locks an account, the call is routed to a specific department. "Hello, this is First National Private Wealth. How may I assist you?" The voice on the speaker was calm, professional, and loud enough for the waiter to hear. "This is Denise Anderson," my mother barked. "I am at Le Chateau and your incompetent system is declining my cards. I have a limit of $50,000. Fix it immediately, or I am moving my assets to Chase." "One moment, Ms. Anderson. Let me access your file." There was a pause. The sound of typing. The restaurant was dead silent. Everyone was watching the woman in the hat screaming at a telephone. "Ms. Anderson," the representative said, his voice changing. It became cooler, more formal. "I see the issue here. The primary trustee has placed a hard lock on all associated accounts." "The primary trustee?" Mama Denise sputtered. "I am the beneficiary. It is my money. I am looking at the trust agreement, ma'am. The assets are held in the Denise Anderson Revocable Trust, but the sole trustee with administrative power is Ms. Zora Anderson." "Zora," my mother whispered. The name came out like a curse. "Yes, ma'am." "Ms. Zora Anderson initiated an emergency freeze on all assets at 11:15 this morning." Why, my mother shrieked. "On what grounds?" You cannot just freeze my money. I have bills to pay. I have a lunch tab. The representative cleared his throat. According to the notes on the file, the trustee has invoked the conduct clause of the trust agreement, specifically the section regarding, and I quote, actions detrimental to the family estate and behavior unbecoming of a beneficiary. Behavior unbecoming. Ebony gasped. Furthermore, the representative continued, the trustee has dissolved the discretionary spending fund. The balance on your cards has been set to 0. The automatic transfers have been cancelled, and the overdraft protection has been revoked. 0, Mama. Denise asked, her voice trembling. What do you mean 0? I mean the available balance is $0.00, ma'am. The accounts are empty. The funds have been transferred to a holding account controlled solely by the trustee. You have no access to these funds until the trustee releases them. But I am at a restaurant, my mother wailed. I have a $5,000 bill. How am I supposed to pay? I cannot help you with that, ma'am. You will need to contact the trustee directly. Is there anything else I can help you with? Mama Denise stared at the phone. She looked at the waiter. She looked at Chad. She looked at Ebony. The color had drained from her face, leaving her looking old and gray beneath the heavy makeup. You are telling me I am broke, she whispered. I am telling you that you are dependent, ma'am, and your provider has cut you off. Have a nice day. Click. The line went dead. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. It was the kind of silence that happens after a car crash before the screaming starts. The waiter stood there, the leather folder still in his hand. He was not smiling anymore. Madam, he said, his voice like ice, we need another form of payment. Now. Mama Denise looked at Chad. Pay him. Chad shrank back in his chair. I told you, Denise. My accounts are switching over. I do not have access. You have a wallet, she screamed, grabbing his jacket. You have cash. You have a watch. Pay the man. I cannot, Chad stammered. This is a rental suit. I mean, I do not have anything on me. She turned to Ebony. Give me your purse. Ebony clutched her bag to her chest. No, this is my wedding money. There is no wedding, Mama Denise shrieked. There is no house. There is no money. Zora took it all. Give me the bag. She lunged for Ebony. The waiter signaled to the manager. 2 large men in black suits appeared from the shadows near the kitchen. They were security. Ladies, gentlemen, the manager said, stepping up to the table. I think it is time we settled this in the office. If payment cannot be rendered, we will have to contact the authorities. Theft of services is a felony for this amount. Police. Mama Denise whimpered. No, you cannot call the police. I am a respected member of the community. Then pay the bill, the manager said. She looked around the room. She saw the faces of the people she wanted to impress. She saw the pity. She saw the amusement. She saw the judgment. She took off her diamond ring, the one Richard, her second husband, had given her before they divorced. It was the only real asset she had left that wasn't tied to the trust. Here, she said, her hand shaking as she placed the ring on the table. It is worth 10,000. Take it. Just let us go. The manager picked up the ring. He examined it under the light. He looked at the waiter. Keep the ring as collateral, he said. You have 24 hours to return with cash. If not, we sell it. And do not come back until you can pay. He gestured to the door. Get out. They stood up. It was a walk of shame to end all walks of shame. Mama Denise stripped of her ring, stripped of her pride. Ebony crying into her hands. Chad looking at the floor, trying to make himself invisible. They walked past the tables of whispering diners. They walked past the bar where they had ordered the expensive champagne. They walked out into the heat of the afternoon sun. I watched the transaction alert on my phone update. Payment failed. I took a sip of water. The second act was over. They were on the street. They had no home. They had no money. They had no dignity. And now they had 50 missed calls to make. I picked up my phone. I swiped to the Do Not Disturb setting. I turned it on. I was going to the spa. I had a massage scheduled for 3 o'clock. It was going to be a very relaxing afternoon. Let them panic. Let them sweat. Let them realize that the only thing standing between them and the gutter was the daughter they had slapped in the face. I stood up and put on my sunglasses. The game was just getting interesting. They thought they had hit rock bottom. They were wrong. They had just hit the ledge. The drop was still coming. The air in the private suite at the St. Regis Spa smelled like lavender and expensive silence. It was a heavy, curated silence, the kind you have to pay $500 an hour to experience. I was wearing a plush white robe that felt like a cloud against my skin, and my feet were soaking in a copper basin filled with warm water and rose petals. A few miles away at Le Chateau, the air smelled like panic and lobster bisque, but here the only sound was the soft, rhythmic bubbling of a water feature in the corner. I had placed my phone face up on the small teak table next to my chair. I did not put it on silent. I wanted to hear it. I wanted to see it. For 35 years, my phone had been a leash. It was the device through which my mother summoned me to fix her computer, through which Ebony demanded money for hair appointments she could not afford, through which the family poured their incompetence into my ear. Today, however, the phone was not a leash. It was a scoreboard. It started with a single vibration, then another, then a continuous angry buzz that rattled the delicate teacup sitting next to it. The screen lit up, darkened, and lit up again, a strobe light of desperation. 50 missed calls. I watched the number climb. 48, 49, 50. Most people would feel anxiety seeing that many notifications. They would assume someone had died or the house was on fire. I felt nothing but a cool, detached satisfaction. It was the feeling of watching a storm rage outside while you are sitting by a warm fire. I reached for the phone not to answer, but to observe. I swiped open the notification center. It was a digital autopsy of their meltdown. The first wave of texts had come from Ebony about 10 minutes ago, right when the waiter would have told them the card was declined. These messages were commands. They were written in the language of a spoiled child who has never been told no. Zora, pick up the phone right now. The card is not working. Fix it. We are at Le Chateau and the waiter is acting stupid. Call the bank. I scrolled down. The tone shifted rapidly as the reality of the situation set in. The commands turned into insults. This was the Ebony I knew best, the one who lashed out when cornered. Are you doing this on purpose? You represent the trust. If this is a joke, it is not funny. You are embarrassing us. People are looking. Pick up the phone, you witch. I took a sip of my cucumber water. I could picture her perfectly. She would be typing these under the table, her acrylic nails clicking furiously against the screen, a bead of sweat ruining her professional makeup. She would be looking at Chad, waiting for him to do something and realizing he was useless. Then came the third wave. The fear. Zora, please. They are talking about calling the police. Mom is crying. She gave them her ring, but they say it is not enough for the bill. Please pick up. I am sorry about what I said yesterday. Just pay the bill and we can talk. I paused on that one. We can talk. That was always the trap. Talking meant me listening to their excuses. Talking meant me accepting their half-hearted apologies so they could go back to using me. There was nothing to talk about. The time for talking was when I tried to show them Chad's criminal record. The time for talking was before my mother slapped me in the face. Now was the time for consequences. I scrolled past 12 missed calls from Mama Denise. She never texted if she could avoid it. She preferred to scream. The voicemail icon showed she had left 5 messages. I did not need to listen to them to know what they said. They would be a mix of biblical guilt trips and maternal rage. She would be invoking the name of Jesus and my dead father in the same breath, demanding I honor my parents by paying for their gluttony. Then I saw it. A text from a number I did not have saved, but I recognized the area code. It was a Florida number. Chad. I opened the message. It was the first time he had ever texted me. Usually he spoke to me through Ebony or my mother, or he just barked orders at me like I was the help. Zora, look. We are family. Let us not blow this out of proportion. I can explain everything about the house. Just unlock the accounts so we can leave. We do not want a scene. I will pay you back next week when my funds clear. I stared at the words. We are family. Yesterday I was the help. Yesterday I was the ugly sister. Yesterday I was a liar and a saboteur. But today, now that he was staring down a felony theft of services charge, we were family. I laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound that startled the esthetician who was walking back into the room with a tray of hot towels. Everything okay, Ms. Anderson? She asked, her voice hushed and soothing. Everything is perfect, I said. Just reading a joke. I looked back at the phone. I will pay you back next week. The audacity was breathtaking. He had no funds to clear. His accounts were overdrawn in 3 states. He was still trying to con me. He thought I was the same Zora who paid for the engagement party deposit. He thought I was desperate for connection. He did not know that Zora was dead. I typed a reply to Chad. I watched the little typing bubble appear, imagining him staring at his phone in the restaurant, hope flaring in his chest. I typed, I do not have a brother named Charles Miller, and my family does not steal. Then I deleted it. No, that was too much engagement. That was giving him what he wanted, a negotiation. He wanted to argue. He wanted to explain. He wanted to drag me back into the mud with them. I deleted the text. I did not send anything to Chad. Silence was louder. Silence was a mirror. Let him stare at his own reflection and see exactly how small he was. I went back to the main thread with Ebony and my mother. The messages were still coming in. They were frantic now. Zora, they are calling security. They are going to arrest Chad. Mom is having chest pains. Do something. I looked at the phrase, Mom is having chest pains. It was their trump card, the medical emergency. Whenever my mother lost an argument, she got sick. Whenever the money ran low, she felt faint. It was a performance I had bought tickets to 1,000 times. I had rushed to emergency rooms, paid for private ambulances, and sat by bedsides only to find out it was indigestion or anxiety. I checked the timestamp. They had been at the restaurant for 3 hours. The bill was nearly $5,000. They were reaping the harvest they had sown. I thought about the last 24 hours. I thought about the slap. I thought about the books in the wet grass. I thought about the voicemail telling me I was out. If I was out, then I was out. Being out meant I was not the emergency contact. Being out meant I was not the bank. Being out meant their chest pains were a matter for 911, not for Zora. I typed a single message to the group chat. I am out. Remember, I hit send. Then I did something I should have done 10 years ago. I went to the settings menu. I tapped on Do Not Disturb. I selected the option for indefinitely. I pressed the power button on the side of the phone. The screen went black. The buzzing stopped. The light died. The room was silent again. The water feature bubbled. The scent of lavender wrapped around me. The esthetician, a woman named Sarah with strong hands and a soft voice, looked at me. Are you ready to begin? She asked. I looked at the black rectangle of the phone on the table. It looked like a tombstone. A tombstone for the girl who used to beg for scraps of affection. Yes, I said, leaning my head back against the cushion. I am ready. I closed my eyes. I did not wonder if they were being arrested. I did not wonder if my mother was actually sick. I did not wonder how they would get home. For the first time in my life, their chaos was happening on a different planet. I was in my own orbit now. And the view was spectacular. I felt Sarah's hands on my shoulders, working out the tension that had lived there since I was a child. Take a deep breath, she said. Let it all go. I inhaled. I thought about the house in Buckhead with its locked gates. I thought about the frozen bank accounts. I thought about the look on Chad's face when the card declined. I exhaled, and I let them go. I let them fall. I was not coming to save them. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. The wallet was closed. The secretary had resigned. The sister was gone. There was only the trustee left, and the trustee was on vacation. While I was breathing in lavender steam and letting the tension melt out of my shoulders at the St. Regis, the atmosphere at Le Chateau had shifted from uncomfortable to legally hazardous. The restaurant manager, a man named Henri, who had patience thin as a crepe and a memory long as a receipt, had reached his limit. He was done with the excuses. He was done with the declined cards. He was done with the woman in the oversized hat screaming about bank errors and trust funds. He signaled to the hostess, a young woman who looked terrified of Mama Denise, and told her to dial 911. The threat of police intervention usually sobers people up, but my mother was operating on a level of delusion that required stronger medication. She was still holding court at table 4, surrounded by the wreckage of her seafood tower, insisting that her daughter was on her way to fix everything. She told the security guards that I was merely stuck in traffic. She told them I was a powerful developer who would have their jobs if they dared to touch her. She was buying time with currency she did not have. And then salvation appeared. Or at least, what looked like salvation. A black Mercedes Maybach pulled up to the valet stand outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was sleek, intimidating, and clearly owned by someone who did not worry about overdraft fees. The back door opened and out stepped a man who looked like he was carved from mahogany and granite. It was Davis, my attorney. Davis was 6 feet 4 inches of legal prowess. He wore bespoke suits that fit him like armor. He did not walk. He glided with the weight of supreme confidence. He was the kind of lawyer you hired when you wanted to bury someone, not when you wanted to negotiate. He was the hammer I kept in a glass case for emergencies. And today, I had broken the glass. Mama Denise saw him through the window. Her face lit up with a relief so profound it was almost pitiful. She grabbed Ebony's arm. "Look," she cried, pointing a trembling finger. "It is Mr. Davis." Zora sent the lawyer. I told you she would not leave us hanging. She probably sent him with the check because she was too embarrassed to come herself." Chad perked up, wiping the sweat from his upper lip. "Is he the one with the money? He is the one with the power," Mama Denise declared, fixing her hat. "He manages the estate." Thank God. Zora came to her senses. She stood up, smoothing her dress, preparing to greet him like a visiting dignitary. She waved the security guards away. "It is fine," she told them haughtily. "My counsel has arrived. This misunderstanding is over." Davis entered the restaurant. He did not look at the host. He did not look at the bar. He scanned the room, locked eyes with Mama Denise, and walked straight toward her. He did not smile. He held a thick, cream-colored envelope in his hand. "Mr. Davis." Mama Denise gushed, extending her hand as if she expected him to kiss it. "You have no idea how incompetent these people have been. My cards are malfunctioning and Zora was unreachable. I assume she sent you to clear the tab and drive us to the new house." Davis stopped 3 feet away from the table. He did not take her hand. He did not acknowledge Chad or Ebony. He looked at my mother with eyes that were flat and professional. "Ms. Anderson," he said, his voice a deep baritone that carried across the silent dining room. "I am not here to clear the tab." Mama Denise's smile faltered. "What?" "I am here representing my client, Ms. Zora Anderson, in her capacity as the sole trustee of the Anderson estate and as the managing member of Zora Holdings LLC. He held out the envelope. "You have been served." "Served," Mama Denise whispered. Her hand dropped to her side. Davis did not wait for her to process it. He opened the envelope and began to pull out documents, laying them on the table right next to the empty oyster shells. Item 1, Davis stated, placing a document with a red stamp on the tablecloth. "This is a temporary restraining order and a cease and desist notification. You are hereby ordered to maintain a distance of no less than 100 yards from Ms. Anderson, her residence, her place of business, and any properties owned by her affiliated companies. This includes the property at 45 Magnolia Lane." Restraining order, Ebony squeaked. But she is my sister. She is your victim, Davis corrected, not even looking at her. And the law recognizes her right to be protected from harassment, financial abuse, and physical assault. The slap at the engagement party was witnessed by 40 people, Ms. Ebony. We have affidavits. He placed the next document down. It hit the table with a heavy thud. Item 2. This is a formal notice of termination regarding the Denise Anderson Revocable Trust. Under the Moral Turpitude Clause, specifically Section 4, Paragraph B, the trustee has the right to dissolve any discretionary payments if the beneficiary engages in conduct that brings reputational harm to the estate or the trustee. He looked at Chad, then back at Mama Denise. Attempting to defraud a landlord using a shell company while misrepresenting family assets constitutes reputational harm. The monthly allowance is hereby terminated effective immediately. The credit lines are closed. The vehicle leases, which are in the company name, will be repossessed within 48 hours, if not surrendered voluntarily. My car. Mama Denise gasped, clutching her chest for real this time. You are taking my Rover. It is not your Rover, ma'am, Davis said coldly. It is Zora's Rover. You were just driving it. He pulled out the final document. This one was an invoice. It was printed on thick, scary legal paper. And finally, Item 3. This is a demand for restitution. Zora Holdings LLC advanced a deposit of $50,000 to secure the property at Magnolia Lane based on the fraudulent application submitted by Mr. Charles Miller, who claimed to have the funds to cover the lease. Since the lease was obtained under false pretenses and since the deposit was non-refundable due to the last-minute cancellation caused by your breach of contract, you are liable for the full amount. He slid the invoice toward Chad. You have 30 days to remit payment of $50,000, Mr. Miller. Failure to do so will result in immediate civil litigation, and given the nature of the application fraud, we will be forwarding the file to the district attorney's office for review regarding potential criminal charges. Chad looked like he was going to vomit on the tablecloth. 50,000, he choked out. I do not have 50,000. Then I suggest you find a very good public defender, Davis said. He stacked the papers neatly. He placed a business card on top. Do not contact Zora directly. Any attempt to call, text, email, or visit her will be considered a violation of the restraining order and will result in immediate arrest. All communication goes through my office. And I charge $600 an hour. Davis buttoned his jacket. He turned to leave. Wait! Mama, Denise screamed, grabbing his sleeve. You cannot just leave. The bill. Who is going to pay the bill? Davis looked at her hand on his sleeve until she let go. Then he looked at the restaurant manager who was standing right behind him with his arms crossed. That is a personal debt incurred by these individuals, Davis told the manager. The Anderson estate accepts no liability for their gluttony. Good day. He walked out. He did not look back. He got into his Maybach and drove away, leaving them stranded on an island of their own making. The restaurant manager stepped forward. He was done being polite. He beckoned to the security guards. All right, folks, the manager said. The lawyer is gone. The cards are dead. And the police are 5 minutes away. You have two choices. You pay this bill right now in full, or you leave this restaurant in handcuffs. Mama Denise looked at the bill. $4,800. She looked at Ebony, who was sobbing into her napkin. She looked at Chad, who was staring at the tablecloth like it contained the secrets of the universe. I do not have cash, she whispered. Zora took it all. The manager sighed. He looked at her hand. Then he looked at her wrist. That is a nice ring, he said. And a Rolex, if I am not mistaken. Mama Denise curled her hand into a fist. No, not the ring. Richard gave me this ring. It is the only thing I have left from that marriage. It is collateral, the manager said. We will have it appraised. If it covers the bill, we will hold it until you return with cash. If you do not return in 24 hours, we sell it to cover our losses. Same with the watch. And the young lady's bracelet. Mama Denise started to shake. This was the bottom. This was the moment the facade did not just crack, it shattered into dust. She was not the matriarch. She was not the queen. She was a woman pawning her jewelry to pay for a lunch she could not afford. She looked at the other diners. They were all watching. Some were taking photos. She knew these people. She saw Mrs. Gable from the garden club. She saw the pastor from the church across town. They saw her being shaken down like a common thief. Slowly, painfully, she twisted the diamond ring off her finger. It left a pale band of skin where it had sat for 10 years. She placed it on the table. It made a hollow sound. Then she unclasped the Rolex. She put it next to the ring. "Ebony, give him the bracelet," she said, her voice dead. "But Mom, Chad gave me this," Ebony whined. "Give him the bracelet!" Mama Denise screamed, her eyes bulging. Ebony took off the gold bangle. It was fake gold, probably given Chad's finances, but the manager took it anyway. He swept the items into a velvet pouch. He nodded to the security guards. "Escort them out," the manager said, "and make sure they do not take the silverware." The walk to the door was a funeral procession. Mama Denise went first, her head bowed, shielding her face with her purse. Ebony followed, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. Chad brought up the rear, stumbling slightly, looking like a man walking to the gallows. They stepped out into the blinding Atlanta sun. The heat hit them instantly. They stood on the sidewalk, dazed. They had no car. The valet had brought the rental around, but Chad couldn't pay the valet fee, so the keys were being held hostage until he produced $20. They didn't even have $20. They had no home. The movers had taken their furniture to a storage depot that required payment to access. They had no money. The bank accounts were frozen. They stood there, sweating in their expensive clothes while the city moved around them. Cars honked. People walked by laughing, talking on phones, living lives that were secure and funded. Mama Denise looked at her bare finger. She looked at the empty street, and then she screamed. It was a primal sound, a sound of rage and realization. She screamed Zora's name. She screamed it at the sky, at the pavement, at the indifferent world. But Zora was not listening. Zora was under a hot towel getting a foot massage and wondering what she should order for dinner. Ebony sat down on the curb, heedless of the dirt on her white tracksuit. "What do we do now, Mom? Where do we go?" Mama Denise looked around. She saw a Motel 6 sign flickering in the distance blocks away. It was the kind of place she used to make fun of, the kind of place she said was for people who made bad choices. "We walk," she said. "We walk until we find somewhere cheap. And then..." "Then what?" Chad asked. "Then we figure out how to kill her," Mama Denise hissed. "Not literally, you idiot. We kill her reputation. We kill her standing. We take this to the only court that matters in this town." "The church," Ebony whispered. "The church," Mama Denise confirmed. "Tomorrow is Sunday. We are going to testify. We are going to tell the world that Zora abandoned her family. We are going to cry. We are going to beg. And we are going to make sure that by noon tomorrow, Zora Anderson is the most hated woman in Atlanta." She started walking, her heels clicking on the hot pavement. It was a long walk to the motel, but she had rage to fuel her. And rage, as she was about to find out, burns a lot faster than it builds. I turned over on the massage table. The esthetician asked if the pressure was okay. "Perfect," I said. "Absolutely perfect." I did not know their plan yet. But I knew my mother. I knew she would not go quietly. I knew she would try to use the one weapon she had left: shame. Let her try. I had receipts. I had video. And I had the truth. If she wanted to take this to church, I was ready to preach. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon by the time the Anderson family procession reached their final destination for the evening. It was not the sprawling estate on Magnolia Lane with its marble floors and Egyptian cotton sheets. It was not even a mid-range hotel with a complimentary continental breakfast. It was the Starlight Motel, a roadside establishment situated uncomfortably close to the interstate highway, where the neon sign buzzed with the frantic energy of a dying insect, and the letter L flickered on and off, transforming the name into the Starite every 3 seconds. They had walked 4 miles in the Atlanta heat. Their designer clothes were stained with sweat and city grit. Mama Denise's feet were swollen inside her Ferragamo heels, forcing her to walk with a limp that ruined her usually imperious stride. Ebony was trailing behind, dragging her feet the hem of her white bridal tracksuit gray with dust. Chad looked like a man who had just swum across a swamp in a three-piece suit. I was not there to see them check in, but I know the Starlight. I know it because years ago when I was first building my portfolio, I bought the land adjacent to it. I knew the night clerk, a man named Earl, who sat behind bulletproof glass and had seen things that would make a preacher lose his faith. I can only imagine the look on Earl's face when 3 people dressed for a gala stumbled into his lobby smelling of expensive perfume and desperation, counting out crumbled bills and loose change to pay for a single room with 2 double beds. They barely made the $49 rate. I suspect Chad found a $20 bill tucked in his sock, a reserve he had hidden from the restaurant manager. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and industrial cleaner, the kind of lemon scent that burns your nose, but fails to mask the underlying odor of despair. The carpet was a kaleidoscope of stains. The air conditioning unit under the window rattled like a lawnmower, coughing out lukewarm air that did little to cut the humidity. Mama Denise sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress sagged under her weight. She stared at the wall, her eyes unfocused. She was in shock. Her brain, usually so adept at spinning narratives where she was the victim, or the victor, had finally hit a wall it could not climb. She had no ring. She had no watch. She had no home. For the first time in her life, she was exactly as poor as she had always feared being. Ebony did not have the capacity for silence. She went straight to the bathroom. A moment later, a wail pierced the thin walls, a sound so high and mournful you would have thought she had discovered a body in the tub. She stormed out of the bathroom holding a tiny bar of soap wrapped in wax paper. "This is it!" she screamed, throwing the soap at Chad. "This is what I'm supposed to wash my face with. Do you know what I put on my skin, Chad? Do you know how much my regimen costs? I need my La Mer cleanser. I need my toner. My pores are going to clog. I am going to break out. I am a bride, Chad. I cannot have acne." Chad was sitting in the single wobbly chair in the corner, his head in his hands. He did not look up. "Shut up, Ebony," he muttered. "Just shut up about your face. Do not tell me to shut up," she shrieked. "You are the one who messed this up. You said you bought the house. You said you had the money. Where is it, Chad? Where is my mansion? Why am I in a motel that smells like an ashtray?" Mama Denise looked up. The fog in her eyes cleared, replaced by a sudden sharp anger. She turned her gaze on Chad. It was the look of a predator realizing the meat it had been guarding was rotten. "She is right," Mama Denise said, her voice low and dangerous. "You lied to us. You said you handled Zora. You said you handled the lease. You said you were a millionaire." "I am a millionaire?" Chad lied, his voice cracking. "It is just illiquid right now. My assets are tied up in crypto and overseas bonds." Zora knew that. She timed this on purpose. She knew my cash flow was tight this week. She did this to humiliate me. "You humiliated yourself." "Mama." Denise stood up. She limped over to him, looming over the chair. "You are useless. I gave up my ring for you. I gave up my Rolex. And you brought us here. To a place where drug dealers sleep." "I did not bring us here," Chad snapped, standing up to face her. He was cornered, and like any rat, he was ready to bite. "Zora brought us here. Do you not see what she is doing? This isn't about me. This isn't about money. This is about you. And it is about Ebony." He began to pace the small room, his hands waving in the air, weaving a web of lies to catch them before they turned on him completely. He needed a villain, and he knew exactly who to cast. "Think about it, Denise," he said, his voice taking on a smooth, manipulative cadence. "Why would Zora do this? Why would she buy the house just to lock us out? Why would she pay for the party just to freeze the accounts the next day? She could have kicked us out months ago. She could have stopped the allowance years ago. Why now? Why today? Because she is evil, Ebony sobbed, sitting on the other bed and picking at her nails. No, Chad said, stopping in front of her. He knelt down, taking her hands in his. No, baby. It is not just because she is evil. It is because she is jealous. He looked at Mama Denise. She is jealous of us. She is jealous of the love we have. But mostly, she is jealous of me. Mama Denise frowned. What are you talking about? Come on, Denise, Chad said, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. You saw how she looked at me at the engagement party. You saw how she hovered around me. Why do you think she ran that background check? Why do you think she was so obsessed with my finances? She wasn't trying to protect Ebony. She was trying to break us up. She wants me. I laughed out loud in my hotel room when I heard this later. The audacity was so staggering it was almost art. Chad, a man who looked like a loaf of unbaked bread, trying to convince my mother that I, a woman who dated men who owned islands, wanted him. But desperation makes people stupid. And Mama Denise was desperate. She wanted a reason that did not involve her own failure. She wanted a reason that made Zora the bad guy, and her the victim of a tragic romance. She wants you, Mama. Denise repeated the idea, taking root. Of course she does, Chad said, gaining confidence. Look at her. She is 35. She is alone. She has no one. And then I come along, successful, handsome, and I choose Ebony. I choose the younger, more beautiful sister. It killed her, Denise. It absolutely killed her. She tried to come on to me at the party, did you know that? She asked me to meet her in the service corridor. When I turned her down, when I told her I only loved Ebony, she snapped. He stood up, gesturing to the dingy room. That is why we are here. This is not about fraud. This is not about money. This is a woman scorned. She is punishing us because she cannot have me. She locked the accounts to force me to come crawling to her. She locked the house to break me. She thinks if she strips me of everything, I will leave Ebony and go to her. Ebony gasped. She looked at Chad with wide, wet eyes. She believed him, because believing him meant she was still the prize. Believing him meant she won. That witch, Ebony whispered. She wants my man. She has always been jealous of you, Mama Denise said, her eyes narrowing. Since you were babies. She hated that you were lighter. She hated that you were prettier. She hated that you were my favorite. Exactly, Chad said. He had them now. He had shifted the blame. He was no longer the broke fraudster. He was the coveted prize in a war between sisters. And Zora was the monster. So what do we do? Mama Denise asked. She has all the money. She has the lawyers. We are stuck in this hole. We fight fire with fire, Chad said. Zora thinks she can hide behind her money. She thinks she can hide behind her shell companies and her legal threats. But she forgot one thing. What Mama Denise asked. Reputation, Chad said. Zora cares about her image. She cares about being the big shot developer. She cares about what people think. And in this town, in our community, there is only one court that matters. He pointed a finger toward the ceiling, not at God, but at the power structure that ruled their social circle. The church, he said. Mama Denise's eyes lit up. First Baptist. Tomorrow is Sunday. Chad said, a slow smile spreading across his face. It is the first Sunday of the month. Communion Sunday. The bishop is preaching. The whole congregation will be there. The deacons. The business owners. The people Zora needs to respect her. We go there. Mama Denise whispered, the plan forming in her mind. We go there, Chad confirmed. We go there looking just like this. Broken. Humble. Victims. We walk right down the center aisle. We get on that altar. And we testify. We tell them what she did, Ebony said, sitting up straighter. We tell them everything Chad said. We tell them that the rich, powerful sister threw her own mother out on the street. We tell them she stole the family trust. We tell them she did it out of jealousy and spite because she tried to seduce her sister's fiancé and failed. Mama Denise stood up. She ignored the pain in her feet. She ignored the stain on her dress. She looked like a general rallying her troops. "We will cry," she said. "Oh, we will weep." Chad agreed. "We will beg the bishop for help. We will ask the congregation for prayer. We will paint a picture of Zora so ugly that she will not be able to show her face in Atlanta again." And then Mama Denise said, a cruel glint in her eye, "When the pressure is on, when the community turns against her, she will have to pay. She will have to open the accounts to save face. She will have to give us the house just to make the noise stop." "She thinks she can shame us," Chad said. "We are going to shame her. We are going to destroy her name before God and everyone." "It is perfect," Ebony said. "I will wear my white suit. It looks even sadder with the dirt on it." "Get some rest," Mama Denise commanded. "We have an early morning. We need to be at the doors when they open. We need to make sure we get a seat in the front row." Chad sat back down, relief washing over him. He had survived another day. He had spun a lie so big it had swallowed the truth. He thought he had won. He thought he had found Zora's weakness. He did not know that I had ears everywhere. He did not know that my cousin Faith was the choir director at First Baptist. He did not know that Faith had been listening to Mama Denise brag for months about the wedding, and she had texted me the moment she heard the rumors about the restaurant incident. And he certainly did not know that I was already awake, sitting in my hotel room looking at the calendar. Sunday. Communion. I picked up my phone. I dialed Auntie May. She answered on the second ring, her voice groggy but alert. "Zora," she said. "Is it done?" "Not yet, Auntie," I said. "They are going to First Baptist tomorrow. They are planning a show." Auntie May sighed. "Your mother never knew when to stop digging." "They want to testify," I said. "They want to tell the congregation that I abandoned them. They want to ruin me." "Well," Auntie May said, her voice sharpening, "we cannot have that. What do you need?" "I need you to find your best hat," I said. "The one with the feathers. And I need you to meet me at the church at 9 a.m. I am not going to let them control the narrative. If they want to testify, I think it is time I gave a sermon of my own." I hung up the phone. I looked out the window at the sleeping city. Chad thought he was playing chess. He thought he was moving pieces on a board he understood. He did not realize that I owned the board. I owned the pieces. And tomorrow, I was going to flip the table. They wanted to go to church. They wanted to bring God into this. Fine. I would meet them there. But I wasn't coming for forgiveness. I was coming for judgment. And unlike the Lord, I did not have a mercy setting. I lay back on the pillows. I closed my eyes. I visualized the sanctuary, the stained glass, the heavy oak pews. It was a beautiful setting for a massacre. "Let them pray," I whispered to the darkness. "They are going to need it." First Baptist Church of Atlanta is not just a place of worship. It is a courtroom where the jury wears Sunday hats the size of satellite dishes, and the verdict is delivered in whispers behind paper fans. It is the center of gravity for the black elite of the city. If you are not seen here on the first Sunday of the month, you might as well not exist. My mother knew this. She knew that in this arena, truth was secondary to performance. And she was ready to give the performance of a lifetime. I was not there when they arrived, but my cousin Faith was. She was texting me updates from the choir loft, hidden behind her hymnal. According to Faith, the arrival of the Anderson family was a masterclass in calculated misery. They did not pull up in the valet lane. They had the taxi drop them off a block away so they could walk up the main steps looking weary and downtrodden. Mama Denise had abandoned her sequins and silk. She was wearing a simple gray dress that looked like something a pilgrim would wear to a funeral. It was wrinkled. She wore no makeup, exposing the dark circles under her eyes that were likely genuine after a night at the Starlight Motel. Her hair, usually sprayed into a helmet of perfection, was pulled back into a severe, humble bun. Ebony was still in her white tracksuit, but she had rubbed the dirt stains in deeper. She walked with a limp, leaning heavily on Chad. And poor Chad, had lost his jacket and tie. His shirt was unbuttoned at the top, his sleeves rolled up, looking like a man who had been working in the fields rather than running a con. They entered the sanctuary just as the opening hymn began. They did not go to their usual pew in the third row, the one with the brass nameplate that I had paid for 3 years ago. No, that would suggest pride. Instead, they shuffled to the very front near the altar and sat on the uncomfortable wooden bench reserved for those seeking prayer or repentance. It was a strategic choice. It placed them directly in the line of sight of Bishop Green and the entire deacon board. The service proceeded with its usual rhythm. The choir swayed, the organ hummed, the ushers passed the collection plates with the precision of Secret Service agents. I watched the live stream on my phone from the back of my town car as we navigated the Sunday traffic. I saw my mother clutching a tissue, her shoulders shaking with silent, heaving sobs. Ebony had her head on Chad's shoulder. Chad kept his head bowed, looking for all the world like a penitent sinner. When the time came for testimonies, usually a joyous part of the service, where people thanked God for promotions or successful surgeries, Mama Denise stood up. She did not wait to be called. She walked to the microphone stand in the center aisle. She gripped the metal stand with both hands, as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Bishop Green looked down at her from the pulpit. He knew my mother. He knew her as the woman who wrote large checks and chaired the flower committee. He did not know that the checks were drawn on my account. Sister Denise, the bishop, said, his voice booming over the speakers. You have a heavy heart today. Share your burden with the saints. Mama Denise leaned into the mic. Her voice was a broken whisper amplified to fill the cavernous room. I come to you today, church. She began, pausing to wipe a tear, not as a woman of standing, not as a mother of success. I come to you as a woman who is homeless. A gasp rippled through the congregation. Fans stopped waving, hats turned. Homeless, she repeated, letting the word hang in the air. Yesterday, my family and I were thrown out on the street. We were locked out of our home. Our belongings were stolen. We slept in a motel where the rats were bigger than the Bible. Murmurs of outrage started to bubble up. Who would do such a thing? Someone shouted from the back. My own flesh and blood. Mama Denise sobbed. My eldest daughter, Zora. The silence that followed was heavy. Zora. The name hung there, accused. People knew me, or they thought they knew me. They knew me as the quiet one who sometimes came to service with my mother. They knew me as the one who wrote the checks for the building fund. She has been blessed. Mama Denise continued, gaining strength from the audience's shock. God gave her a gift for business. She has money, she has power. But somewhere along the way, she lost her heart. She became jealous of her sister. She became bitter because Ebony found love, true love, with a good man. She gestured to Chad, who looked up with sad puppy dog eyes. Because she could not have him, she decided no one could. Mama Denise cried. She used her money as a weapon. She waited until the moving trucks were loaded. She waited until we were vulnerable. And then she cut us off. She froze the accounts my late husband left for me. She locked the gates to the home we were supposed to share. She left her mother, her sister, and her brother in Christ on the street with nothing but the clothes on our backs. Shame, a deacon shouted. Shame on her. She told us to starve, Mama Denise wailed, going off script but loving the reaction. She told us we were not good enough for her world. She wants to see us broken. She wants to see us beg. Well, I am begging. Not to her, but to God, and to you, my family. We have nothing. We have no food. We have no place to go. Pray for my daughter's soul, because the devil has taken hold of her checkbook. She collapsed into Chad's arms. It was a masterful performance. If I were not the target, I would have applauded. Ebony let out a high-pitched keen that sounded like a wounded animal. The congregation was on its feet. People were shouting. The bishop looked thunderous. This is a grave injustice, the bishop roared into his microphone. To honor thy mother and father is the first commandment with a promise. To abandon them in their time of need is a sin that cries out to heaven. I signaled my driver. We were 2 blocks away. Inside the church, the anger was mounting. It was a mob mentality now dressed in Sunday best. They fed on the drama. They loved the fall of the arrogant. And in their eyes, I was the arrogant career woman who had forgotten where she came from. I was the cautionary tale they warned their daughters about. The woman who gained the world but lost her soul. Chad stood up then. He took the mic from my mother. I just want to say, he said, his voice trembling with fake humility, that we forgive her. We do not want revenge. We just want a home. We just want peace. I love Ebony. I love Denise like my own mother. I tried to reason with Zora. I tried to pay her, but she just laughed at us. He hung his head. A woman in the front row stood up and started speaking in tongues. The emotion in the room was at a fever pitch. They were ready to grab pitchforks. They were ready to march to my penthouse. And that is when the heavy oak doors at the back of the sanctuary swung open. It was not a subtle entrance. The sunlight from the street poured in, cutting through the dim, stained glass atmosphere like a laser. I stood in the doorway. I was not wearing gray. I was not wearing humility. I was wearing a cream-colored suit tailored by a man in Milan who does not speak English but speaks the language of power fluently. My heels were 4 inches of steel. My hair was pulled back sharp and severe. I wore sunglasses, which I slowly removed as I stepped over the threshold. But I was not alone. Holding my arm, leaning on an ivory-handled cane, was Auntie May. Auntie May was the oldest living member of the Anderson family. She was 90 years old. She had founded the missionary board. She had baptized half the people in the room. She knew where every skeleton in Atlanta was buried because she had helped dig the graves. She was the one person my mother feared more than poverty. Mama Denise had spent years trying to keep Auntie May away from me, knowing that May had always seen through her facade. But last night I had gone to May. I had shown her the receipts. I had played her the recordings, and May had put on her Sunday hat, a towering creation with pheasant feathers that looked like a war bonnet. The sound of my heels on the hardwood floor echoed in the silence that had suddenly fallen over the room. Click, click, click. The congregation parted. They turned in their pews. They saw me, and they saw May. Mama Denise stopped crying. She looked up, her eyes widened. She saw May and she knew the game had just changed. We walked down the center aisle. I did not look at the people whispering. I kept my eyes locked on the pulpit. I looked at the bishop. I looked at Chad, who was shrinking behind the microphone stand. I looked at Ebony, whose mouth was hanging open. We reached the front. I stopped 10 feet from where my mother was huddled. Auntie May tapped her cane on the floor. 3 sharp raps. Bishop, Auntie May said, her voice thin, but clear as a bell. I believe there has been an omission in the testimony, Sister May, the bishop said, looking uncertain. We were just hearing about a terrible tragedy. A tragedy indeed, Auntie May said. But the tragedy is not homelessness, Bishop. The tragedy is lying in the house of the Lord. Mama Denise stood up. She tried to rally. May, please. You do not know what she did. She put me on the street. Hush, Denise, Auntie May snapped. You have been running your mouth for 20 years. Today you are going to listen. I stepped forward. I did not ask for the microphone. I took it from Chad's hand. He let it go without a fight. He was staring at the 2 police officers who had just quietly entered the back of the church, standing by the doors with their arms crossed. He did not know they were there for him yet, but his conman instincts were screaming. Good morning, church, I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice I used in boardrooms when I was about to acquire a competitor. I apologize for interrupting the service, but my mother seems to have forgotten a few details in her story. She told you she is homeless. She told you I abandoned her. She told you I am jealous. I looked at the congregation. I am not here to testify with tears. I am here to testify with truth. And in my family, truth comes with documentation. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I held it up. I have connected to the church's audio-visual system, I said. Bishop, if you would be so kind as to look at the projection screens. The bishop looked confused, but the sound technician in the booth, a kid named Jamal, who I had hired as an intern 2 summers ago, hit the button. The massive screens on either side of the pulpit flickered to life. Slide 1 appeared. It was a screenshot of the voicemail transcript from yesterday morning. The text was huge white letters on a black background. Voicemail from Mom Zora. I am saying this for the last time. You are out. Do not dare show your face at the wedding or the new house. We have chosen Chad and Ebony. You are nothing but a dark cloud. We are moving on without you. A murmur went through the crowd. People squinted. They read the words. You heard her say I abandoned her, I said into the mic. But as you can see, she fired me. She told me not to come back. I simply obeyed my mother. Is that not what the Bible tells us to do? Mama Denise gasped. That is out of context. I was angry. Slide 2, I said. The screen changed. It was a copy of the deed for 45 Magnolia Lane. The address of the mansion. The owner's name was highlighted in yellow: Zora Holdings LLC. Beneath it was a copy of the wire transfer receipt. $4 million, paid by Zora Anderson. And next to it was a copy of the lease application Chad had submitted. My mother told you Chad bought the house, I said. She told you he was a provider. But as you can see, the house belongs to me. I bought it with the money I earned working 18-hour days while my sister slept until noon. Chad was a tenant. And not a very good one. I turned to Chad. He was shaking his head, backing away. You told them you paid the deposit, Chad, I said. But the screen shows the deposit was waived as a favor to family. A favor I granted. I turned back to the crowd. She said I froze the trust fund because I was jealous. The screen flickered again. Slide 3. This was the bank statement for the Denise Anderson Revocable Trust. It showed the deposits. $5,000 a month every month for 10 years. The source of the funds was listed clearly. Transfer from Zora Anderson personal account. There is no trust fund from my father, I said, my voice breaking slightly for the first time. My father died with nothing but debt and a good name. I paid the debt. I created the trust. I funded her lifestyle. The clothes on her back, I paid for them. The ring she pawned yesterday, I paid for the insurance on it. I have been carrying this family since I was 25 years old. The room was silent. You could hear a pin drop. The judgment in the room was shifting. It was turning like a tide. But why did I stop? I asked. Why did I cut them off yesterday? Was it jealousy? Was it because I wanted her man? I pointed at Chad. No, it was because of this. Slide 4. This was the one that would end it. This was the kill shot. It was the video from the security camera I had installed in the living room of my mother's old house to keep an eye on her health. It was dated 2 nights ago. The video played. The sound was crisp. Mama Denise and Ebony were sitting on the sofa drinking my wine. She is such a fool, Mama Denise was saying on the screen. Zora. She thinks she is running things. She is just a cash mule. We ride her until she drops, and then we take the rest. Ebony laughed on the video. She is so desperate for you to love her mom. It is pathetic. As soon as I marry Chad, we don't need her anymore. She is too dark to be in the wedding photos anyway. She ruins the aesthetic. Just keep taking the checks, Mama Denise said on the screen. The ugly duckling pays for the swan's feathers. That is the way of the world. The video ended. The screen went black. The sound in the church was not a murmur this time. It was a roar. It was a collective gasp of horror. Auntie May stood next to me, her face like stone. She looked at Mama Denise. She raised her hand and pointed her cane at her sister-in-law. You are a disgrace, Auntie May said, her voice cutting through the noise. You have eaten your own child. You have shamed this family. You have shamed this church. Mama Denise stood there. She was stripped bare. There was no lie left to tell. The congregation saw her. They saw the cruelty. They saw the greed. They saw the colorism she had tried to hide under the guise of preference. Ebony was sobbing, but no one was looking at her with pity anymore. They were looking at her with disgust. And Chad. Chad was looking at the exit. He took a step backward. He thought he could slip away in the confusion. He thought he could disappear. But I had one more slide. Slide 5, I said. The screen lit up one last time. It was a mugshot. 3 of them, actually. Florida, Texas, Georgia, Charles Miller. Wanted for fraud, identity theft, grand larceny. The police officers by the door stepped forward. They walked down the aisle. The sound of their boots was heavy and final. Chad saw them. He tried to run. He scrambled over the altar rail. He knocked over the communion table. The grape juice spilled like blood across the white carpet. The officers grabbed him before he could reach the side door. They slammed him against the wall. The click of handcuffs was the loudest sound in the world. "It is not me," Chad screamed as they dragged him out. "They tricked me. Ebony knew. She knew I was broke. She helped me with the application," Ebony shrieked. "No, he is lying." It was over. The house of cards had fallen. The testimony was complete. I put the microphone back in the stand. I looked at my mother. She was slumped on the bench, small and defeated. She looked at me and her eyes were empty. I turned to the bishop. "I apologize for the disruption, Bishop," I said, "but the truth shall set you free, and I am finally free." I took Auntie May's arm. We turned around. We walked back up the aisle. The congregation parted for us again, but this time there was respect in their eyes. There was awe. I walked out into the sunlight. I did not look back. I had preached my sermon, and the congregation had said amen. I stepped onto the raised platform of the pulpit, the wooden floorboards creaking slightly under the weight of my resolve. The microphone stand was still warm from where Chad had gripped it, his palms sweating with the effort of his deception. I didn't look at him. I didn't look at my mother, who was currently shrinking into the fabric of the front pew as if she could dissolve through the cushions. I looked at the congregation. These were the people who had judged me based on a lie. These were the people who had whispered about my ingratitude while I paid for the very roof over their heads. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. It was a simple movement, but in the hush of the sanctuary it felt like drawing a weapon. I turned to Jamal in the sound booth. He was already waiting, his eyes wide with anticipation. We had tested the connection 5 minutes before the service started, while the choir was still robbing up in the back. I gave him a small nod. He tapped a button on his console, and a heavy HDMI cable lowered from the lectern. I plugged it into my phone. The massive projection screens flanking the golden cross flickered. The image of the church logo vanished, replaced by the stark, bright interface of my photo gallery. A murmur rippled through the pews. They were used to seeing hymn lyrics and scripture verses up there, not the contents of a private phone. "Bishop," I said, my voice magnified by the speakers filling every corner of the room. "You asked for a testimony. You asked for the truth about why this family is broken. I believe in receipts. I believe that if you are going to bring a grievance before the Lord, you better have the paperwork to back it up." I tapped the first file. It was an audio waveform, a voicemail. "My mother had stood here 10 minutes ago and wept tears of gold telling you I abandoned her. She told you I left her homeless out of spite. She told you I walked away because I was jealous of my sister's happiness." Let us listen to the actual conversation that took place the morning before the moving trucks arrived. I pressed play. The sound of my mother's voice boomed through the sanctuary. It was not the weeping, fragile voice she had used on the altar. It was the voice I knew, the voice of steel and venom. "Zora, I am saying this for the last time. You are out. Do not dare show your face at the wedding or the new house. We have chosen Chad and Ebony. You are nothing but a dark cloud over this family, a bitter, jealous spinster. We are moving on to the Buckhead mansion without you. Goodbye." The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It was the sound of 300 people holding their breath at the same time. I looked at Mama Denise. She was not crying anymore. Her face was ashen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. She looked at the screen, then at the bishop, then at me. She realized that her performance had just been gutted by her own voice. "You heard her," I said to the crowd. "You heard the date stamp. Yesterday morning, she didn't call me for help. She called to fire me. She called to tell me I was no longer welcome in the family I have supported for a decade. She told me to stay away. So I did. I respected her wishes. I honored my mother by doing exactly what she asked." I paused, letting the words sink in. "She told you I abandoned her. But how can you abandon someone who has already evicted you from their life?" "I did not leave them homeless. They left me." They packed their bags, they hired the movers, and they drove away from the home I provided for them to chase a fantasy. I swiped the screen. The waveform disappeared. A document appeared. It was a high-resolution scan of a property deed. The text was dense, but I had highlighted the important parts in neon yellow. At the top, the address, 45 Magnolia Lane, Buckhead, Atlanta. "This is the house I said, the dream house. The mansion my mother told you Chad bought for Ebony. The estate where they were going to start their new Zora-free life." I pointed to the line listed as grantee the owner, Zora Holdings LLC. A gasp went through the room. It started in the front row with the church mothers and rolled backward like a wave. And just below that, the signature of the managing member, Zora Anderson. "I bought this house," I said, my voice steady. "I bought it 6 months ago as an investment property. I paid $4.2 million for it. Cash." I swiped again. A wire transfer receipt appeared on the screen. It showed the movement of funds from my personal savings account to the closing attorney's escrow account. The numbers were staggering to most people in the room, but to me, they were just the cost of doing business. 100% of the purchase price came from me, I said. Not a dime came from Chad. Not a penny came from a trust fund. I earned every single dollar. I turned to look at Chad. He was shaking. He was gripping the back of the pew in front of him so hard his knuckles were white. He looked like he wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The eyes of the entire church were pinning him to the spot. "Chad," I said. He flinched. "You told my mother you bought this house. You told my sister you were a real estate mogul. You stood right here on this holy ground and you let them testify that you were the provider." I took a step toward him. He shrank back. "So tell me, Chad, if you bought the house, where is the deed? Where is the receipt? Where is the proof that you own anything other than the rental suit on your back?" Chad opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at Ebony. He looked at Mama Denise. He was drowning, and there was no life raft. "You rented it," I said, answering for him. "You filled out a lease application with a shell company you thought was anonymous. You paid a security deposit with a check that bounced 3 days later. You lied to my mother. You lied to my sister. And you tried to move them into a house you had no right to enter." I turned back to the screen. I swiped to the next image. It was the lease application Chad had submitted. It was filled with lies, inflated income, fake references, and a credit score that was barely triple digits. "He isn't a savior, Mom," I said to Mama Denise. "He is a squatter. And the only reason you didn't end up in jail for trespassing yesterday is because I own the building and I told the security team to stand down." Ebony let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She stood up, her white tracksuit stained with the dirt of her downfall. She looked at the screen. She looked at the deed with my name on it. She looked at Chad. "You told me you bought it!" she screamed at him. "You showed me the keys!" "They were copies," I said. "He made copies of the keys he got during the walkthrough. They didn't work because I changed the locks remotely the second I got that voicemail." Ebony turned on him. She started hitting him, her fists flying, her nails raking at his face. "You liar! You liar! You made us look like fools!" The deacons rushed forward to pull her off him. It was chaos. It was ugly. But it was the truth. I watched them struggle. I watched my perfect sister unravel. I watched my mother bury her face in her hands, unable to look at the screen that proved her entire life was a lie funded by the daughter she despised. I wasn't done. I tapped the screen again. You said I froze the accounts because I was jealous, I said, bringing the room back to attention. You said I cut you off out of spite. A bank statement appeared on the screen. It was the monthly statement for the Denise Anderson Revocable Trust. Look at the deposits, I said. Look at the column on the left. $5,000 every single month for 10 years. And look at the source. Transfer from Zora Anderson personal account. There is no trust fund, I said. My father died broke. He had gambling debts, he had loans, he left you nothing but a pile of bills and a foreclosure notice. Mama Denise looked up. Her eyes were wide, terrified. She was shaking her head, mouthing the word no over and over again. I paid them, I said. I paid the debts. I saved the house. And then I created this account. I told you it was from Dad because I didn't want to break your heart. I didn't want you to know that the man you worshipped had left you destitute. I wanted you to keep your dignity. So I worked. I worked double shifts. I built my company from the ground up. I poured my sweat and my life into that account so you could go to brunch, so you could buy hats, so you could pretend you were royalty. I pointed at the screen. That is not inheritance, Mom. That is my salary. That is my blood. And yesterday, when you slapped me, when you told me I was nothing, when you threw my father's books in the dirt, I decided that the Bank of Zora was closed. The congregation was stunned. People were crying. Not for Mama Denise, but for the magnitude of the sacrifice I had made and the cruelty with which it had been repaid. You called me a cash mule, I said softly. I saw the video. You laughed about it. You said I was the ugly duckling paying for the swan. I swiped to the next slide. It was a still frame from the security camera in their living room. Mama Denise and Ebony laughing, wine glasses in hand. The timestamp was 2 nights ago. You didn't know I installed cameras to make sure you were safe, I said. I heard everything. I heard you planning to use me until I dropped. I heard you say you didn't need me once Chad came into the picture. I looked at Chad. Well, Chad is here, I said. And the money is gone. So tell me, Mom. Tell me, Ebony. How does the swan fly when the duckling stops paddling? Mama Denise slid off the bench. She hit the floor on her knees. It wasn't a prayer position. It was a collapse. She reached out toward me, her hands trembling. Zora, she wailed. Zora, baby, please. I didn't know. I didn't know it was you. You knew, Auntie May said, stepping up beside me. Her voice was like a gavel coming down. You knew deep down. You just didn't want to admit that the child you treated like trash was the one keeping a roof over your head. You preferred the lie because the lie made you feel special. The truth made you feel small. Mama Denise sobbed, rocking back and forth on the carpet. I tapped the screen one last time. The image of the deed vanished. The screen went black. I unplugged my phone. The show was over. The evidence was presented. The verdict was written on the faces of everyone in the room. I looked at the bishop. He was standing there looking like he had just witnessed a biblical plague. I am sorry for the disruption, Bishop, I said. But you preach about truth. You preach about reaping what you sow. Well, the harvest is here. I handed the microphone back to the deacon standing nearby. My hand was steady. My heart was light. I walked down the steps of the pulpit. I walked past my mother, who was still on the floor. I walked past Ebony, who was being held up by 2 ushers. I walked past Chad, who was staring at the door, waiting for the inevitable. I didn't stop. I didn't offer a hand. I had offered hands for 10 years, and they had bitten them every time. I walked up the aisle. Auntie May walked with me, her head held high, tapping her cane with a rhythm that sounded like victory. We reached the back doors. The sunlight was waiting. But before I stepped out, I heard a sound. It was the sound of sirens. They were getting closer. I smiled. The timing was impeccable. Chad Miller. You have a visitor, I whispered. I pushed open the doors and stepped into the heat. Behind me, the wail of the sirens grew louder, drowning out the sobs of the family I used to know. The sound of the sirens outside was growing louder, a rising wail that seemed to harmonize with the chaos erupting inside the sanctuary. Chad heard it too. His head snapped toward the stained glass windows, his eyes wide and feral. He looked at the screen where his lease application was still displayed, exposing his lies in high definition. He looked at the congregation rows of people who had gone from pitying him to looking at him like he was a disease. And then he looked at me. In that moment, the mask of the charming, wealthy fiancé dissolved completely. There was no more pretense. There was only the raw, ugly instinct of a cornered animal. He did not run for the door this time. He lunged for me. "You witch!" He screamed, his voice cracking into a high-pitched shriek. "You ruined everything." He scrambled over the communion rail, knocking over a vase of white lilies that crashed to the floor, spilling water and petals across the altar. He was fast fueled by adrenaline and rage, his hands reaching out as if to strangle the truth right out of my throat. Ebony screamed. Mama Denise covered her eyes. The bishop took a step back, raising his hands in a futile gesture of peace. But Chad never reached me. 2 steps before he could touch the hem of my cream-colored suit, a wall of muscle moved into his path. It was the head of my private security detail, a man named Marcus, whom I had hired specifically for this moment. Marcus did not shout, he did not panic. He simply extended one massive arm and clotheslined Chad mid-air. Chad hit the floor with a bone-jarring thud that echoed through the silent church. The air left his lungs in a wheezing gasp. Marcus placed a heavy boot on Chad's back, pinning him to the carpet like a butterfly in a display case. "Stay down," Marcus said, his voice low and bored. I did not flinch. I did not step back. I looked down at Chad, who was writhing on the floor, his expensive rental suit gathering dust. "You wanted the microphone, Chad," I said into the silence. "You wanted to testify. Well, the floor is yours. But I think I have a few more slides to share before you speak." I tapped my phone screen. The lease application disappeared. A new image filled the massive projection screens. Slide 3. It was a document that looked very different from the others. It was stark. It was official. It had the seal of the Department of Justice at the top. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice steady. "My mother told you this man was a financier. She told you he was a venture capitalist. She told you he was the answer to her prayers. I hired a private investigator last week because, unlike my mother, I believe in vetting my investments." I pointed to the screen. "Meet Charles Miller." A gasp went through the room. It was sharper this time, laced with fear. Charles Miller, also known as Chad, also known as Chase, also known as Chip, I read from the screen. Currently wanted in the state of Florida for 3 counts of grand larceny, wanted in Texas for romance fraud, and wanted in Georgia for identity theft. I swiped to the next image. It was a collage of mugshots, 3 different photos of the man currently pinned to the floor at my feet. In one, he had a beard. In another, his hair was dyed dark. But the eyes were the same. The weak chin was the same. "He targets women," I continued, looking directly at the women in the choir loft. "He targets successful, independent women. He targets women from good families. He tells them he is wealthy. He tells them he is in love. He moves into their homes. He gains access to their accounts. And then he drains them dry and disappears in the middle of the night." I looked at Ebony. She was standing by the pew, her hands over her mouth, staring at the screen. She was shaking her head slowly, a pendulum of denial. "He didn't want you, Ebony," I said softly. "He wanted the trust fund. He wanted the house. He wanted the access. You were just the key code he was trying to punch in." "No," Ebony whispered. "No, he loves me." "He has a wife in Sarasota," I said. Ebony's knees gave out. She sank onto the pew looking as if she had been shot. And 3 children he hasn't paid support for in 5 years, I added. The church was in an uproar. People were standing up shouting. The deacons were trying to maintain order, but the revelation was too big, too ugly to contain. I wasn't done. I had one more slide. The most important one. I tapped the screen. Slide 4. This is not a document, I said. This is a movie. The screen went black for a second, and then a grainy high-angle video appeared. It was the living room of my mother's old house. The timestamp in the corner read 3 days ago. 11:42 p.m. I had installed cameras in the house years ago after my father died to make sure my mother was safe living alone. I never told her. I never checked them. Until this week. The video played. Mama Denise and Ebony were sitting on the beige sofa. They were drinking wine. They were laughing. It was the kind of laughter that makes your skin crawl, conspiratorial and mean. Turn up the volume, Jamal, I said to the sound booth. The sound of their voices filled the sanctuary. She is such a fool, the Mama Denise on the screen said. She took a long sip of wine. Zora. She thinks she is running things. She thinks because she pays the bills she gets to have an opinion. Ebony laughed on the screen. She was painting her toenails. She is just a cash mule, Mom. That is all she is. We ride her until she drops, and then we take the rest. I watched the real Mama Denise. She was not looking at the screen. She was looking at her lap. She was trying to make herself small. She knew what was coming. She is too dark to be in the wedding photos anyway, the Ebony on the screen said. She ruins the aesthetic. We will put her at the back table near the kitchen. Tell her it is because she needs to supervise the catering. She is dumb enough to believe it. The real Ebony let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. Just keep taking the checks, the Mama Denise on the screen said. The ugly duckling pays for the swan's feathers. That is the way of the world. As soon as you marry Chad, we cut her loose. We take the house, we take the trust, and we change the locks. She can go back to her little apartment and rot. The video ended. The screen went black. The silence in the church was heavy. It was the silence of a tomb. It was the silence of people realizing they had been worshipping a monster. I looked at the congregation. I saw shock. I saw disgust. I saw the way they looked at my mother and sister, not with the admiration they usually commanded, but with the revulsion reserved for something you step in on the sidewalk. Auntie May stepped forward. She tapped her cane on the floor. You called her a mule, Auntie May said, her voice shaking with rage. You called my brother's child a mule. You sat in the house she paid for drinking the wine she bought, and you plotted to destroy her. Mama Denise looked up. Her face was streaked with tears and makeup. She looked old. She looked broken. I didn't mean it, she whispered. It was just talk. We were just talking. The doors at the back of the sanctuary banged open. This time it wasn't a dramatic entrance by a family member. It was the police. 4 officers in uniform marched down the center aisle. They did not look at the congregation. They did not look at the screens. They looked at the man pinned to the floor. I called them, I said into the microphone. I told them Charles Miller was here. I told them he was trying to defraud a member of this congregation. The officers reached the altar. Marcus stepped back, lifting his boot. Chad scrambled to his feet, trying to run, but there was nowhere to go. 2 officers grabbed him. They spun him around and slammed him against the communion table. Charles Miller, you are under arrest, one officer said, reciting the words that signaled the end of the dream. It is not me, Chad screamed as the handcuffs clicked into place. They tricked me, Ebony knew. She knew I was broke. She helped me fill out the application. She told me what to write. Ebony shrieked. It was a sound of pure terror. No. He is lying. I didn't know. Check her phone, Chad yelled as they dragged him down the aisle. Check her texts. She knew everything. She just wanted the ring. The congregation watched as the man who had stood there 10 minutes ago claiming to be a victim was hauled away like the criminal he was. The doors closed behind him, cutting off his screams. I stood on the pulpit. I was the only one left standing. My mother was on the floor. My sister was weeping on the pew. The man was gone. I looked at the bishop. He looked pale. He looked like a man who realized he had given the microphone to the wrong person. "I am done," I said. I unplugged my phone. The screen went blank. I handed the microphone to the deacon. I walked down the stairs. I stood in front of my mother and sister. They were huddled together, a tableau of ruin. It was time to finish this. Ebony looked up at me. Her face was a mess. Her white suit was ruined. Her dream was dead. She threw herself at my feet. It wasn't a metaphor. She actually threw herself on the ground and grabbed my ankles. "Zora, please," she sobbed. "I didn't mean it. I was just talking. He tricked me too. He lied to me. I am your sister. You cannot leave us like this. We have nowhere to go." I looked down at her. I felt nothing. No pity. No anger. Just a vast, empty space where my love used to be. "Get up, Ebony," I said. "You are ruining your suit." She didn't let go. "Zora, please. We are family." "We were family," I corrected. "Now we are just people who know each other's secrets." Mama Denise looked up. She was not begging yet. She still had a sliver of pride left, a tiny fragment of the delusion that she was the matriarch. "You have made your point, Zora," she said, her voice raspy. "You humiliated us. You won. Now fix it. Unlock the accounts. Open the house. We need to go home." "Home," I repeated. "You do not have a home, Mother. You threw it away. You threw away the daughter who built it for you." I reached into my purse. I pulled out my checkbook. I pulled out a pen. The room watched. They thought I was writing a check to save them. They thought I was going to fix it just like I always did. They thought the mule was going to carry the load one last time. I wrote a check. I tore it out of the book. The sound was loud in the quiet church. I held it out to my mother. She reached for it, her eyes lighting up with relief. She thought it was for thousands. She thought it was the golden ticket back to her life. She took it. She looked at the amount. $200. She stared at it. She looked at me. Confusion warped her face. "What is this?" she whispered. I leaned down close to her. I wanted her to hear this. I wanted her to remember this moment for the rest of her life. "Do you remember when I was 15?" I asked softly. "Do you remember the airport? Do you remember when you handed me $200 and told me to figure it out because you wanted to go on vacation with your new husband?" Her eyes widened. She remembered. I saw it in her face. The memory she had buried, the sin she thought she had gotten away with. "You left me at the gate," I said. "You told me to catch a cab. You told me I was old enough to handle myself." "Well, Mother, now you are old enough to handle yourself." I straightened up. "That is $200, I said, my voice projecting to the room. "It is enough for an Uber to the homeless shelter downtown. Or a motel. It is your choice. Just like it was my choice to survive when you left me." I turned to Ebony. "And you," I said. "You wanted a rich husband. You wanted the fairy tale. Well, Chad is going to prison. If you hurry, you can catch the bus to the precinct and visit him. Maybe he has some commissary money left." I turned my back on them. I felt Auntie May take my arm. She was smiling. It was a fierce, proud smile. "Let us go, Zora," Auntie May said. "I think we are done here." We walked up the aisle. The congregation parted like the Red Sea. No one said a word. No one tried to stop us. They knew they had witnessed something biblical. They had witnessed the wrath of the patient woman. I walked out of the church doors. The heat of the day hit me, but I didn't feel it. I felt cold. I felt clean. My car was waiting at the curb. The driver opened the door. I helped Auntie May inside. I got in beside her. As the car pulled away, I looked back at the church one last time. I saw my mother and sister stumbling out the front doors, blinking in the sunlight, holding a check for $200. They looked small. They looked insignificant. I turned around. I looked at the road ahead. Where to, Miss Anderson? The driver asked. Forward, I said. Just forward. And for the first time in 35 years, I didn't look back. The rearview mirror was empty, and the windshield was wide open. This story teaches us a powerful lesson: you cannot buy respect from people who profit from your low self-esteem. Zora spent years funding a lifestyle for a family that despised her, hoping her generosity would eventually earn their love. But true freedom only came when she realized that her worth was not a negotiable currency. Setting boundaries isn't an act of cruelty. It is an act of survival. We learn that sometimes the only way to heal is to stop handing scissors to the people who cut you and to build a life where your peace is the highest priority. If Zora's absolute victory inspired you to set your own boundaries, hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of survivors.